Chapter 541-Mission. Office of the Marshal. Sengoku looked at Tina in front of him with a calm face, and said, "Recently, you need to go out to sea to capture a pirate group. The information is on the desktop, and you can check it yourself." "Yes, Marshal." Tina nodded, and after saluting, picked up the information on the desktop. The first picture that appeared in his eyes was an arrogant pirate. Wearing dark red clothes, holding a gun, his tongue is very long, his eyes can see the ambitious man, pink trousers, he looks quite coquettish. The Merc Pirates, Captain Merc Derry, the bounty is 140 million berry. Well, no, it's just a new pirate group, why is there such a high bounty? Tina continued to look down with doubts in her heart. The second bounty list appeared in her sight. Marv Oni, with a bounty of 28 million berry. Charlie, there is a bounty of 25 million berry. Shockman Loman, with a bounty of 23 million berry. ... The difference in the bounty is too big. Tina raised her brows and looked at the warring states in confusion. Is it strange? Sengoku asked with a smile. Yeah. After nodding, Tina expressed her doubts in her heart. This kind of bounty is the first time I have seen it. The captain has suppressed all the bounty of the crew. The rest of the crew adds up to 170, which cannot shake the captain at all. Bounty. It's because of Merc. Warring States' eyes became serious and explained, there has been a lot of uproar recently, because the sound of the piano attracts the Sea Kings, have you heard? Speaking of which, Sengoku's expression became very strange. Because, isn't the creator of this matter the husband of Tina in front of him? Although, it has not been fully announced yet. But basically everyone already knows that Tina and Li Ang have a close relationship. Yeah. Tina blushed slightly and nodded. Li Ang did this, and she naturally knew it quite well. At that time, she was also on the scene and witnessed the scene that shocked the world with her own eyes. This man kidnapped 3,000 children and forced them to learn the piano. He wanted to do this, to get a way to control the Aquarians. Sengoku said with a very heavy expression. Such a scumbag. Tina frowned, her pretty face showing a bit of anger, said. For her own selfish interests, she forced others to do things for her, and the people who forced it were children. When she saw this kind of scum, she was naturally angry. The parents of 3,000 children are all anxious. This time, the incident happened in a place called Sabara Island in the Great Waterway. There has also been a piano frenzy. Basically, anyone who has a dream has done research on the piano. Inevitably, there are some extremists who have no talent. They naturally have to find other paths. At this time, finding children to study for them is the best way. Quote. Sengoku's face was calm, and he continued to introduce. Not just this place, but the whole world, has experienced such a frenzy. There is more than one person who forces children to practice. It's just that, so far, the case is reported, and the situation is more serious, just such an example. Come to think of it, there will be more cases like this in the future. Chapter 541-Task. Come to think of it, there will be more cases like this in the future. Think of this. Sengoku couldn't help rubbing his temples in distress, and sighed heavily. Unexpectedly, what Li Ang did would bring such a huge turmoil to the world, which really surprised him. However, if they can develop Li Ang's idea that can effectively deal with the occurrence of these things. It's a pity that this guy, Li Ang, has no idea of giving them information at all. The sea in the future will be even more chaotic. In this case, our naval headquarters must have strengths that others do not have. Only in this way can we ensure that the naval headquarters will not be subverted by those rampant pirates. Thinking so in his heart, warring states became more and more helpless. I originally thought that when I was about to retire, I could enjoy my leisurely days. But now, BJCJ, it is not as simple as it seems on the surface. The water of the sea is getting deeper and more turbid. Make it invisible to everyone. Because of Liang, because of him alone, the turmoil brought to this sea is quite obvious. In the future, it will also change the pattern of the entire world. In particular, these things brought by Liang seem to come from the thoughts and abilities of thousands of years later. Whether it's attracting the Neptune, it's the idea that came up. It's not like something that can exist in this world. Warring States eased a little, looked at Tina in front of him, and said, "So, if you can, just bring his body back." "Yes, Marshal." Tina nodded solemnly, holding the reward list in both hands. Immediately, she was about to leave the office. At this moment, Warring States hesitated for a while, took a deep breath, and sighed, "If possible, please persuade Liang. The information he controls is too useful to this world, so, if possible, he can put forward any conditions to exchange information." Quote. Okay. Although Tina was puzzled, she nodded and agreed. Seeing the back of Tina leaving, Sengoku became even more bitter. He shook his head helplessly, looked towards the direction of the window, and was speechless for a while. Vegapunk, still at a loss. This situation presents a deadlock. Without Liang's help, it would be difficult for them to break such a deadlock. Even though Vegapunk's wisdom is very strong, but a person's Liang, after all, is limited. This time, he also sent some of his staff to assist Vegapunk. But the end result was unsatisfactory. No one person can inspire or help Vegapunk. Throughout the whole process, Vegapunk still needs to think independently. Starting from the idea, Vegapunk tries to look at the idea from Leon's point of view. Then some birds were also caught for research. What he wants to do is to build a complete concept step by step from the initial direction. As long as the idea appears, there is an unmistakable reverse. This is equivalent to having a beginning for the future manufacture of this machine. As the saying goes, the beginning of everything is difficult. As long as there is an opening, the next thing, although it is also very difficult, but Vegapunk can definitely continue to go down. But the main problem now is that Vegapunk is stuck in the conception, unable to establish a complete conception, and can only start research from the bird. The words Liang put forward at the beginning were about birds. Then, when Vegapunk has nothing to do, he can only frantically look for problems from the bird, hoping to find an accurate direction. Chapter 542-3 Girls Gathered. What a hassle. Sengoku scratched his head, and lost a few strands of his hair. If he struggles with this matter again, he thinks that in less than half a month, he will be bald. He shuddered at the thought of his bald appearance. I don't want to let Dr. Vegapunk go and study slowly. People like me are only suitable for talking about wars and so on. I have absolutely nothing to do with these scientific matters. He stood up and looked at the peaceful sky outside the field, thinking to himself. Boom, boom, boom. A burst of crisp and pleasant sounds came out. Outside the window, a group of busy navies can still be seen, making great efforts for the damaged building of Marin Vando. This fellow Akainu proposed to establish a naval headquarters in the New World. It would be really troublesome if he could become a marshal smoothly. Sengoku's eyes flashed a bit of sadness. He is about to abdicate, and the following generals have also launched relevant actions and measures. Kizaru didn't have the idea of competing for the general, and took the initiative to withdraw from this battle. And Akainu and Aokiji are the best candidates to compete for generals. General will stand out from the two. Hopefully, this kid Aokiji can fight for his breath. Sengoku's eyes flickered, and he whispered to himself. Compared to the radical Akainu, he prefers the marshal of Aokiji's character. This will ensure that the Navy headquarters will not deviate from the original track. If it's Akainu, it's not necessarily the case. Thinking of Akainu's fierceness, even he couldn't help being moved. This will bring waves of shocks to the Navy headquarters. Undeniable. Under his strength, the Navy headquarters may become stronger and stronger, but it also deviates from the original goal of the Navy. So, the Navy, or the Navy. At that time, I am afraid that I will directly become the younger brother of those high-level personnel. This is not the picture that the warring states hoped to see. During his days as a marshal, he also vigorously resisted the control of those in power. Although many times, it is powerless. But anyway, his ability is not a cover, and there are times when he breaks back into a game. Especially, if Vegapunk develops a corresponding machine according to Li Ang's idea. The world government will definitely get involved in the first place. Warring States was very worried. He was even a little scared that the world government had such a weapon in his hands. The Navy headquarters is under the command of the world government, but the Warring States period did not recognize the concept of the world government. Once the world government takes control of such a terrible weapon, how much turmoil will it bring? He couldn't understand this either. But what is certain is that the sea will inevitably set off a bloody storm. The leakage of this matter must be perfectly controlled. Sengoku's face was firm, and he thought so in his heart. However, after thinking about it, he still gave a wry smile, and all his firmness turned into a sigh. How long does it take to develop such a weapon? 10 years, 20 years, 50 years. Relying on Vegapunk alone, it is still too difficult to create it in a period of time. Unless, Li Ang took the initiative to mention Vegapunk, give the other party a complete inspiration and idea, and also help Vegapunk to complete it. But is it possible? Basically in the heart of the Warring States period, it has been determined that it is impossible. If Li Ang really wanted to say something, he would have said it long ago. They are rubbish and hard, and they are useless. It can be basically concluded that starting from Li Ang, there will be no more gains. Of course. With Tina's persuasion, there may still be some possibilities. Chapter 542-3 Girls Gathered. With Tina's persuasion, there may still be some possibilities. However, can Tina really succeed? It seems that she has been fascinated by Li Ang. It should not be Li Ang who listens to her, but she completely obeys Li Ang. So, the chance of Tina's success is close to zero. Warring States sighed heavily, but at the same time helpless. He was also a little fortunate. If such a terrifying weapon was really created in a short period of time. He was really worried that he would be discovered by the people of the world government. The other side. After Tina left the marshal's office, she walked out of the building gate. Looking at the golden sunshine in the sky, she slowly raised her hands to block the light. Her pretty face showed a slight smile. She looked in one direction, and took her long legs forward. She was about to go out on a mission, so she naturally went to see the most important person in her heart. Therefore, it is not difficult to deduce the direction in which she is going. Besides Li Ang's residence, where else could she rush to with such a happy mood? Soon, Tina arrived at Li Ang's residence and reached out and knocked on the door. Dong dong dong. It's so reluctant. Tina's pink lips were slightly opened, and her pretty face was sad, she said. About to part with Li Ang, her mood is indescribable. At the same time, not far away, a figure also appeared. Tautu's long legs as white as jade were exposed to the air, and swayed step by step to Li Ang's residence. As expected, the two women met. So coincidental. Tina's beautiful eyes flickered, her pretty face blushed slightly, and she whispered. Yeah, what a coincidence. Tautu also felt a little ashamed, nodded and said. The purpose of the two people, looking at it this way, is it not the same? 0. Peach Rabbit, why are you here? Tina blushed slightly and asked. I haven't seen this bad guy every few days, and I miss him a bit. So, when I have nothing to do, I came to him. Tautu looked away, coughed dryly, and said in a low voice. In order to hide her shyness, she hurriedly opened her mouth and asked, Tina, how about you? I'm going out on a mission, so come here to say goodbye. If I can, I really don't want to go out, I'm still very sad. Tina shook her pink hair and said truthfully. Going out on a mission. Then you have to be careful. The sea is very lively recently, and there are a lot of pirates, so be careful. Tautumaimai was a little surprised, and immediately reminded with concern. Well, I see. Tina nodded. The recent sea situation was quite chaotic. This is, of course, quite clear in her heart. Moreover, she is not a stunned young man who has just been born. At any rate, she has performed no less than 100 missions and was promoted to the rank of colonel. In terms of handling things, she is naturally much more slick and sophisticated than those novice officers. If she doesn't encounter two monster enemies, she can retreat completely. In this sea area, there are still very few pirates who dare to provoke the navy. Some pirates who are not afraid of death and are extremely arrogant are not excluded. But most of these pirates are just little pirates who have just gone to sea and haven't suffered yet, and they don't have any threat to Tina at all. NLT, 29 and GT. Chapter 543-Gentle Township. The threatening big pirates generally do not take the initiative to provoke the navy. And Tina will not take the initiative to provoke those pirates that she can't afford, so it is not very dangerous for her to go out to sea to perform tasks. Unless you are unlucky enough to encounter a shipwreck. Otherwise, it is very easy to complete the task and return. It's just that the location of the mission is relatively far away. If you go to sea, I'm afraid you won't be able to come back within half a month. It took half a month to separate from Liang, which made Tina very depressed. Did you knock on the door? Tautu's beautiful eyes flashed and asked with a smile. Knocked. Tina nodded, showing some doubts, and said, why haven't you responded for so long? Shouldn't it be, go out? Are they not here? No. There is another possibility. The two of them are doing some shameful things. You also know how powerful Liang is in that regard. Tautu blushed and explained slowly. Shoo, 967, the pure Tina's face turned red. Half of the sky. Inside the house. Liang raised his brows and looked at the direction of the gate with a hint of impatience. This time, who is it? On his body, Hancock's pretty face was blushing, and he was completely exhausted, unable to move. You, go and open the door. Hancock's face was flushed and he whispered softly. She hurriedly pulled a quilt and completely covered her skin so that nothing leaked into the air. At the same time, the tingling pain from that place made her delicate face feel very uncomfortable. Feeling the stinging pain, she glared at Liang angrily, and said angrily, it's all your fault, and you said nothing will happen. Now, people can't walk anymore. Next time, you'll be able to adapt next time. Liang showed a narrow smile and said. Do you still want the next time? Absolutely not. Hancock hurriedly stretched out his hand to block in front of him, arrogantly. My Lady Empress, I'm sorry to tell you. This matter is up to you. You should obey me obediently. Liang laughed, looking at Hancock, who was blushing and delicate like a fairy, and said. Humph. Hancock snorted and hurriedly said, go open the door. As you order, Lady Empress. Liang nodded immediately, walked out of the room with a smile, and closed the door. Turning his head, he walked towards the door with a somewhat impatient expression on his face. Crunch. The door opened. The disheveled Liang was exposed to the sight of Tautu and Tina. Immediately, the two women's faces became more and more red, and their beautiful eyes were a little ashamed. It's the two of you. I thought it was the old guy from the Warring States period. Liang's eyes flashed and he said with a smile. All that impatience, all disappeared without a trace. What are you doing? It took so long to open the door. Tina moved in her footsteps, walked in directly, and asked. Tina. Tautu quickly pulled Tina's arm, blushing, and whispered. Ah, oh. Tina exclaimed. Only then did she react. Her face turned red all of a sudden, like a ripe red apple, without a trace of impurities, very attractive. Her beautiful eyes flickered, and she quietly observed the furnishings in the house. As expected. Without seeing Hancock's figure, she knew it immediately. What's the matter with you? After Liang closed the door, he smiled at the two women and asked. Can't I come to you with nothing? Peach Rabbit rolled his eyes angrily, his delicate face seemed to be full of amorous feelings. That's it. Chapter 543-Gentle Township. That's it. Tina nodded quickly, a smile appeared on her pretty face, and said. Of course you can, but you are here at the right time. Liang had a meaningful expression and laughed. What's wrong? Taotu and Tina looked at Liang and wondered. Come with me. Liang moved, and with the two girls, walked to the room step by step. After opening the door, Hancock's face turned crimson. Seeing Taotu and Tina, he hurriedly said, Why are you here? She clutched the sheet tightly, looking very shy, afraid to meet anyone. You bad guy. Taotu and Tina blushed together and glared angrily at Liang. So, you came today, but you really came at the right time. Liang laughed, his hands restless, sliding directly on the two women's bodies. Don't. Taotu and Tina were so shy, there were so many people here. If they were alone with Liang, then they wouldn't be so shy, but there are other people around, isn't it? It's inappropriate. But the resistance of the two of them could not escape Liang's palm. Soon. The two women were also naked, and got into the cup beside Hancock, revealing a pair of vigilant eyes, looking at Liang, with a blushing face and a delicate face that made people intoxicated. My wives, here I come. Liang burst out laughing and swooped down. After catching the person, regardless of the 3721, the war started directly. From Hancock, to Taotu, to Tina, one by one, all of them were attacked like a storm by Liang. They were shy from the beginning and gradually let go. Liang fought against the three daughters by himself, but he still seemed to be able to do it with ease. On the contrary, Hancock was eliminated directly from the battlefield because of the one-on-one duel with Liang before. Hancock's whole body was weak, his skin was red, and Mei looked at Liang's lively appearance, looking very weak. Why is Liang defeated every time? When she thought of the way she was begging for mercy just now, she felt ashamed, and could not wait to find a hole to crawl in. This bad guy, every time he has to beg for mercy before letting him go. Hancock glared at Liang angrily, his beautiful eyes arrogant, thinking to himself. Soon. She saw that Taotu and Tina were beaten and begged for mercy, but they were still not spared. Suddenly, Hancock felt a little fortunate. These two guys have to bear it, I feel just now. At this time, Taotu looked at Liang's hot-blooded and energetic appearance, and was defeated directly. His face blushed, and he said in a low voice, Wait a minute, wait a moment, pause first. Here, there is no pause. Liang laughed, ignoring Taotu's plea for mercy, and launched a violent attack again. After defeating Taotu, Liang turned his target to Tina, and his smile became even more intriguing. 5.8. This smile was caught in Tina's eyes, and she became a little flustered, and said, I admit defeat. Admit defeat. That's not okay. Liang leaned against Tina's ear and laughed softly. Then, he violently broke out the offensive, causing Tina to continuously endure the fierce attack, her whole face flushed with blood. Especially when she saw Taotu and Hancock beside her, her mood became even more shy. She quickly avoided her gaze and closed her eyes slightly. Just now, I don't know who laughed at us. Hancock and Taotu laughed loudly. You can't run away either. Liang looked at Hancock and Taotu and said. Immediately, the two women's smiles stiffened, and then they suffered Liang's rapid attack. An indescribable sound came from the entire room. However, the sound insulation effect of the house is still very good, and all the sounds here are effectively isolated. NLT, 31 and GT. Chapter 544 The Puzzled Vegapunk. One day passed like that. Marin Van Doe is caught in an eccentric atmosphere. In a research room. Vegapunk was still exploring, his eyes were bloodshot, and he hadn't slept for several days, leaving his spirit directly on the verge of collapse. His eyes were fixed on the few birds in front of him, and there were countless instruments around him, all of which were used to check the trajectories and ways of the birds. Flight. Fly. Vegapunk gritted his teeth, looking particularly anxious, said. The bird seemed to be tired, in the iron cage, motionless, and had no intention of flying at all. This made Vegapunk even more annoyed, and his expression gradually became distorted. Damn. Vegapunk violently slapped the tabletop, and a crisp sound came out. He still couldn't think of any way to deal with it. Doctor, Doc. Several scientists in white coats came over, their faces hurried, and shouted. What's the matter? Vegapunk rubbed his temples and looked at these scientists with blood-red eyes. In his eyes, these people are basically dispensable. With them 19, it will not bring any help, and without them, there will be nothing wrong. This made him want to find the warring states immediately, and drive out all the scientists in the Navy headquarters who were eating dry food, and stay here to save the eyes. Therefore, the attitude of these scientists is naturally self-evident. Even though he didn't have much ability, he was able to work as a scientist in the naval headquarters, which made him feel very uncomfortable. When was the threshold for scientists so low? Is it possible for anyone to become a scientist, to be a scientist, and to fool others casually? This situation is very disgusting to Vegapunk himself. Come on, say something directly, don't make excuses. Vegapunk, expressionless, looked at the few people in front of him coldly, said. Doctor, do you want to take a break? If it collapses, the day when this invention is born will be even farther away. Everything is about the body. A scientist looked at Vegapunk's bloodshot eyes and couldn't help but reminded. If Vegapunk collapsed, the naval headquarters would be in complete chaos. After all, the ability that Vegapunk itself represents is also extraordinary. No need. Vegapunk waved his hand and asked directly, if you have something to say, if you have nothing to do, leave here and let me think about the problem quietly. It is so. Scientists immediately opened their mouths and informed the problem. We have researched various fields and have not been able to find the information about what you said, Doctor. Also, the groundbreaking idea you gave, we think, may not be very reliable. That's right, Doctor, could the idea be wrong? Otherwise, there's no reason why you can't think of one at all. Quote. Hearing the whispers of these scientists, Vegapunk raised his brows and said coldly, if you don't understand, don't talk nonsense. Moreover, this idea, in my opinion, is absolutely feasible. Well then. Several scientists looked at each other and sighed helplessly, saying. They can't change Vegapunk's thoughts, so it's better to leave here directly. Let's go, don't get in the way of my research. Vegapunk waved his hand angrily and said. These guys, if they haven't tried it, say it's impossible. Chapter 544 The Puzzled Vegapunk. NLT, 32 and GT. These guys, if they haven't tried it, say it's impossible. This kind of person really makes him very unhappy. If he is also of this character, it is impossible to create so many great inventions. Most of the time, it's a challenge. Otherwise, are you waiting for the result to find yourself? This is definitely not possible. The only way to get the final result is to search for the answer yourself. If you give up halfway and give up easily at the beginning, you will never get results. Just like the scientists in front of him, in the eyes of Vegapunk, he thought they were rabble scientists. All at once, the credibility of the idea was denied. You know, this is the idea proposed by Li Yang. Plus, Vegapunk can 100% believe that this idea is absolutely feasible. Although he hasn't mastered the most critical technology, he can still be sure. This invention is bound to appear in the future. And these scientists, then he can't be complimented. These guys don't know a thing or two about things. On the contrary, the words that persuade others not to continue to try are sharper than the other. Perhaps, it is because of such people that there is such a team. Vegapunk shook his head and said slowly. A team, as long as one person is not willing to take common sense, he will not let others continue to try. It's like, when a person wants to be lazy, he will panic when he sees others working harder than him. Then, he will find ways to persuade others not to work hard and be lazy together. As long as there is such a moth, then the entire team will become lazy, unwilling to make progress, without any self-motivation. From Vegapunk's point of view, it was the existence of such a person in the team of scientists in front of him, which directly affected the work efficiency of the entire team. Of course. Maybe it's not that one person affects the entire team, but that the entire team has a temperament, and there is no self-motivation at all. For such a person, Vegapunk did not see it clearly, and immediately said, "Let's go, don't get in the way of my work here. Immediately, get out of here." "Yes, Doctor." Several scientists nodded and looked at Vegapunk very respectfully. Then, they quickly left the research room. 100 before they left, they still didn't think that Vegapunk's research would be a smooth success. Because, in their view, it is too profound. This technology may be successful, but they lack too much technology. If the technology is complete, it can certainly be successful. But now, relying only on Vegapunk and these instruments, it is difficult to successfully realize that idea. Seeing the departure of a group of scientists, Vegapunk's face was expressionless, and his eyes were once again devoted to the observation in front of him. Everything has to start from the beginning. Since it is a bird, it is natural to find the entrance from the bird's body. Why do birds fly? The flapping of wings. Vegapunk frowned, carefully observing the bird's every move. He had to build a preliminary idea in his head before he could continue to think. Otherwise, just relying on the ideas given by Liang is not enough. If this idea came from his own head, he could definitely continue to study it in depth. Unfortunately, the ideas given by others are always not your own ideas, and it will become more difficult to operate. I just don't believe it. Can this question still stump me? Vegapunk gritted his teeth, his eyes bloodshot. He stared at the picture in front of him, his throat rolling and his voice hoarse. NLT, 33 and GT. Chapter 545 _ It's Just Me. Dong dong dong. Come in. Sengoku sat on a chair, frowning, and said. After the door was pushed open, Huang Yuan walked in step by step, his face full of helplessness, and smiled bitterly. The doctor is still researching, and there is no idea of rest at all. Well. Sengoku raised his brows, feeling a little bad, and said, if this is the case, he will soon be exhausted. If he is exhausted, the people of the world government will not let us go. It is necessary to let him rest. In any case, even if he is knocked out directly, it is still a measure that can be implemented. If this goes on, with his physique, it will not last for too long. So, Huang Yuan, if you try to persuade him again, it really won't work, then you can only use the most direct method to knock him unconscious. Or, put medicine in his water. Sengoku's face was calm and he said slowly. Vegapunk, as the scientist most valued by the world government, can't have accidents here in the naval headquarters. But if it is carried out according to the research method of the other party, soon, Vegapunk will naturally be exhausted. At that time, if they die directly here, their troubles will come in a steady stream. Be sure to ensure the safety of Vegapunk's life. Moreover, if Vegapunk is dead, who else can complete this idea? Only Vegapunk can have such a level of brains and knowledge. Therefore, in the sense of reason, in any case, the Warring States period could not see Vegapunk die on his own territory. This is a huge blow to the world government. But for him, it was also a great loss. Once Vegapunk dies, all thoughts will be exhausted. Only Liang can create. Other scientists, Warring States never counted on those people. Yes, Marshal. Kizaru nodded solemnly, his whole body turned into golden light, and disappeared without a trace. Inside the office, Sengoku was lying on a chair, looking at the ceiling with a sad face. I'm about to retire, so why can't I save myself a snack? If this matter is handed over to Akainu or Aokiji, he will be very worried. After all, there are too many things involved. If it wasn't for him to handle it himself, he would never be relieved. Do other people really not use such power to go astray? He also had to make sure to cover up the world government's awareness. Otherwise, if it is discovered by those who control the supreme power, the consequences will be too great. If only Li Ang could be persuaded. Warring States waved his hand helplessly and sighed. In a certain room, Li Ang held a soft body in one hand, Hancock's body shrunk in his arms, Tautu and Tina also fell into a deep sleep, their beautiful brows were tightly locked, looking exhausted. The three girls were really tired after a whole day of fighting. Only a monster like Li Ang can have no influence. The position before and after Hancock was so red and swollen by Li Ang that she was afraid that she could not walk now. Especially in the position that was developed for the first time, she still showed a somewhat uncomfortable expression in her deep sleep, and her delicate face seemed to make people unable to help but feel pity. Tautu opened her eyes first and looked at the ceiling. Soon, she felt it, a hand was sliding restlessly on her body, making her pretty face blush slightly. She gave Li Ang a white glance, and said, "How about it? I can't take it anymore. This time, I'll let you go." Li Ang smiled, feeling the delicate skin with his left hand, and said, "Don't worry, there will be no further action. So, you don't have to raise your hand to surrender directly before the battle." Chapter 545 It's Just Me. And GT, page 1/2. Please click the next page to continue reading. NLT, 34 and GT. Li Ang smiled, feeling the delicate skin with his left hand, and said, "Don't worry, there will be no further action. So, you don't have to raise your hand to surrender directly before the battle. Who knows what's going on in your head, you bad guy?" Tautu said angrily. Her expression also showed a bit of discomfort, and there was still some soreness. She glanced at Li Ang sideways, muttering in her heart, "I really don't know how this bad guy is so powerful. He is still alive and well, isn't he tired? Of course I'm not tired with a beautiful woman in my arms." Li Ang seemed to see through Tautu's thoughts and said with a smile. Tautu snorted and turned her head quickly, her pretty face flushing brightly. Later, Hancock and Tina woke up one after another, opened their eyes, and looked at Li Ang's direction immediately. "What time is it?" Hancock's crisp voice was a bit hoarse and heavy. Maemu looked at Li Ang in front of him and asked. "A day has passed." Li Ang rubbed Hancock's black hair and smiled. "It's been a day." Hancock was stunned, and his pretty face still had an uncomfortable look. Her face was a little red, and the sore place still spread all over her body. She couldn't help but twist a little, and unknowingly, she bumped into Li Ang again. "You are playing with fire, my lady queen." Li Ang rolled with blood, feeling the soft body twisted in his arms, and said, "No, not coming." Hancock hurriedly raised his hand in surrender, daring to move. If she came back, she was afraid that she would be exhausted and fainted. At this time, Tina covered her pretty face and said, "I forgot, I'm going to sea to perform a mission." "Mission?" With a hint of surprise, Li Ang smiled and said, "Do you still have a mission?" "Of course, otherwise, why am I looking for you, this bad guy? Of course, I'm here to see you for the last time. This time, it will take at least half a month to come back." Tina shook her pink hair and said, "What kind of task requires laboring, our beautiful Tina?" Li Ang asked with a smile. "It's all your fault." Tina rolled her eyes at Li Ang and explained, "Now, people in the whole world are practicing the piano. Everyone wants to communicate with the Sea Kings and become the overlords of the sea. Among them, there are many extremists. They have no ability and can only pin their hopes on the children. So, they took most of the children directly and forced them to practice. Du's Zhao. The most terrifying thing is that if someone really succeeds with their level of madness, wouldn't it be possible that they would attack the Navy headquarters in minutes? Speaking of which, Tina's pretty face became a little dignified. Ha 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 ha. Seeing Tina's serious and pretty face, Li Ang laughed and said, "You still laugh, it's all because of you." Tina pinched Li Ang's arm and said angrily, "Are you afraid they will succeed?" Li Ang said with a little interest, and said meaningfully, "I can tell you the truth, in this world, except for me, no one can control the Sea Kings." "Why?" The three girls, Tina, Hancock, and Tautu, were puzzled and asked. "Because, in this world, only your husband has such a terrifying talent." Li Ang laughed and said. Immediately, the three girls were greeted with blank stares. NLT, 35 and GT. Chapter 546-3 Silly Women. That's how you brag about yourself. Hancock said with a smile on his pretty face and said angrily. Hearing Li Ang's confident words, she also felt deeply proud. After all, this is his own man. "I'm not boasting, it's justified." Li Ang pinched Hancock's delicate face and smiled. "What's justified?" Tina showed a bit of curiosity. Mei Mei looked at Li Ang, blinking, looking really cute. Coupled with her pink hair falling down, Li Ang couldn't help but peck at her cheek. "Come on." Tina blushed, hugged Li Ang's arm with both hands, and said coquettishly. "Well, you have to listen carefully." Li Ang showed a smile and explained, "Actually, the sound of the piano that attracts the Sea Kings is not something ordinary people can make. Do you think that it is possible to attract the Sea Kings smoothly if you contact them personally? It's a misunderstanding of thinking. I can assure you, it's impossible for anyone to get to this point. Whether it's starting to connect as a child, or practicing as an adult. No matter how good or bad the talent is, or the time of practice. If you want to communicate with the Sea Kings, you need more than a certain level. And, the most important thing is." Having said that, Li Ang deliberately paused. "What is it?" Tautu's beautiful eyes flashed, and she couldn't help but ask curiously. One kiss, 213 I'll tell you." Li Ang smiled and said. "You bastard." Hancock, Tautu, and Tina all gave Li Ang a blank look, and their cheeks blushed. "Then do you want to keep listening?" Li Ang smiled and said mysteriously. "Huh." The three girls snorted, but still blushed, and each offered a fragrant mouth. "Now, let's talk about it." Hancock looked at Li Ang angrily, his delicate face blushed half the sky, and asked. "Of course you can." Li Ang nodded with a smile and explained, "Before I explain, let me ask you one thing. How many people does this sea, One Piece, belong to?" "All alone." Hancock spoke directly and replied, "In an era, naturally there can only be One Piece. Isn't this the consensus that everyone knows?" "Yes, in an era, only one person can exist." Li Ang laughed, looked at the three girls, and said. "This is the answer. In an era, there is only one person who can communicate with the Sea Kings by the sound of the piano. And in this era, this person is Li Ang. Therefore, no matter how others practice, it is absolutely impossible for them to do something similar to Li Ang in this era. Besides, if a person is 100 years old, then he is gifted with extraordinary talent, and he will be given 500 years to practice day and night. It is also very difficult to get such a field as Li Ang, who is directly given the ultimate domain by the system. In an era, only one person can exist." Tina's pink lips parted slightly, and her pretty face suddenly became stunned. No wonder. Li Ang is so sure that no one will surpass him. It turned out that, just like One Piece, an era can only accommodate one person to do this. Hancock and Tautu were also stunned. Their beautiful eyes were fixed on Li Ang's face, and suddenly the pride in their hearts became more and more powerful. How about you? Do you admire your husband? Li Ang put his arms around the soft body and smiled. Chapter 546-3 Silly Women. And LT, 36 and GT. Li Ang put his arms around the soft body and smiled. Shameless. Tautu blushed, said. The most critical question is actually 1 point. My level is already at the top. So, how much time does a person with extraordinary talent need to get close to my field? 100 years, 200 years, 500 years. This is also a problem. If I don't have enough time, I can't reach my level in my entire life. This is not a problem of talent and hard work, but a problem of chance. Li Ang looked at the 3 daughters and explained again. Chance. The 3 women's red lips moved slightly and whispered to themselves. At this time, Li Ang spoke again and said, it's like a legend that once existed thousands of years ago. That person is not just talent and hard work. He must have got some kind of different opportunity at some point. And then, with his own talent and hard work, he can achieve that scene. Otherwise, there are not a few talented people in this world, and there are not a few hard-working people. But why, there is only this legend. You can understand it if you think about it carefully. Many times, talent and hard work are only one of them. There is a more important factor. This factor is called chance. After listening to Li Ang's words, the 3 girls seemed to have a clear understanding. But in a short period of time, he couldn't finish laughing at Li Ang's words. Wait. Tina's beautiful eyes shone brightly, looked at Li Ang, and asked in a low voice, then, what about your chance? You didn't say that talent and hard work are not enough. Since you can do it, you are better than that person thousands of years ago. More horrific scenes. Then do you also have a great chance? Immediately, Hancock and Tautu also looked at Li Ang. What a little smart guy. Li Ang's face was a little moved. He rubbed Tina's pink and smooth hair, nodded and said, of course I have a chance. What's that? The 3 women showed their curiosity and asked. That's it. Li Ang looked at the 3 women in front of him, very focused, and said seriously. The expressions of the 3 girls also became serious. They seldom saw Li Ang's serious expression. Naturally, they were attracted by Li Ang's words. The room was silent. Under the eyes of Hancock, Tautu, and Tina, Li Ang stretched out his hand, rubbed the 3 girls' hair, and said in an inexplicable tone, my chance, that is, you. With you by my side, I feel infinite power. So, for me, there is no difficulty in attracting sea kings. This kind of thing can also be called simply, the power of love. After he finished speaking, Li Ang pecked affectionately on the delicate face of the 3 girls, earnestly and earnestly. For a while, Hancock, Tautu, and Tina were all stunned by Li Ang. Mei Mei lost her mind for a while, her eyes became very soft, and they looked at Li Ang, full of love. The power of love. The 3 of them parted their red lips slightly and whispered to themselves. Women are emotional. Under the attack of Li Ang's sweet words, they soon couldn't find Bei. This made Li Ang show a smile, looking at the 3 beautiful fairies in front of him, his eyes became very soft. This is obviously why the 3 of Hancock believed his words so easily. It was because Hancock, Tautu, and Tina believed in him 100%, so they didn't doubt the truth of what he said. It's 3 silly women. Li Ang sighed and shook his head inwardly. It's not that he doesn't want to tell the 3 girls. For a moment just now, he seemed to tell the truth to the 3 Hancocks. But in the end, he stopped. The existence of the system is too bizarre. This secret, let him be alone for the rest of his life, wrought in his heart. And LT, 37 and GT. Chapter 547-Stubborn Tina. It's so reluctant. Tina became emotional. Mei Mei looked at Li Ang and said, I haven't seen you for half a month. I will miss you very much. I don't want to leave here. Fool, it's not that we can't see you again. Li Ang rubbed Tina's pink hair and smiled. Aside. The delicate faces of Hancock and Tautu are also somewhat moving, and their expressions are somewhat inexplicable. If the two of them were to leave Liang, I'm afraid they wouldn't be able to do it either. Especially Hancock. She felt that even if she left Liang for a day, she would be very uncomfortable, her heart was empty, and her whole person became very strange. Only when Liang was by her side did she feel very fulfilled and happy. After hearing Tina's words, she had to think about it. What if she left Liang for half a month? I'm afraid, she will live like a year every day. Fortunately, it's not me. Hancock took a deep breath and eased his breath a little, thinking to himself. How could he possibly leave Liang? This is absolutely impossible. With this kind of thought in mind, she could calm down a little bit. In the same way, Tautu also had the idea of Hancock just now. His eyes softened, looking at Liang's face. No matter how he looked at it, he would never get tired of it. On the contrary, the more she looked, the smoother she felt, and she couldn't help but wanted to get close to Liang. Tina, you are so pitiful. Hancock looked at Tina and said deeply. Yeah, I don't even want to leave. Tina Mei said with a bit of sadness. Don't act like it's parting from life and death. Liang looked at the three sensual silly women angrily and said. Unfortunately, Tina just can't bear it. Tina looked at Liang eagerly, her delicate face full of reluctance. I can't bear it either. Liang's tone softened, rubbing Tina's pink hair, and said. I've decided. Tina took a deep breath, blushing even more, looked at Liang in front of him, and shouted, Come again, I will definitely defeat you, then go. Tina, you. Hancock and Tautu looked at Tina's firm expression and were moved. Since I'm about to go on a mission, no matter how I say it, I have to miss the time we spent together at the last moment. Tina slammed towards Liang's position and opened her mouth to send it directly. Feeling Tina's initiative, Liang's blood rolled, turning passive into active. Soon. There was an intriguing sound again. During this whole process, Hancock and Tautu couldn't bear to look directly. This little girl, Tina, was already on the verge of defeat, but she was still muttering that to defeat Liang, she was completely unilaterally pressed and beaten. Tina, this little girl, is too cruel to herself. Tautu covered her face. Mei looked at the scene where Tina was severely attacked. She really didn't dare to watch it. Even so, Tina behaved very stubbornly this time and refused to admit defeat at all. Thus, Liang's offensive also became more and more violent, making Tina almost fainted, but she was forcibly supported by her. With her physique, she almost fainted. It can be seen how fast Liang's offensive is. I won't lose, come again. Tina coaxed her face and said again. Now she can see that, in addition to a bit of discomfort, there is a deep determination on the whole face. She looked at Liang with beautiful eyes, and tears gradually appeared in her eyes, which flowed out. She gritted her teeth and snorted, without begging for mercy. Chapter 547-Stubborn Tina. She looked at Liang with beautiful eyes, and tears gradually appeared in her eyes, which flowed out. She gritted her teeth and snorted, without begging for mercy. Tina, I admire you so much. Tautu looked at the scene where Tina was beaten and retreated, but she still refused to admit defeat. She couldn't help but admired it. In fact, during the whole process, Liang was very gentle and did not hurt Tina. This stupid woman made his whole heart soften. How could he be willing to hurt his own stupid woman? Therefore, his offensive has gradually become moderate. Hancock's beautiful eyes also looked at Tina, revealing a sweet smile. However, she felt the pain from before and after her, and she felt powerless for a while. At this time, Tina still refused to admit defeat. Her face was blushing to the point of dripping blood. She looked at Liang very stubbornly, and muttered, Come on, don't you have a meal? Hear these stern words. Liang couldn't bear it any longer, and the offensive immediately became more and more violent. Tina Mei's eyes gradually turned white, and she was about to faint. She bit her tongue and woke up again. Feeling the fierce attack, She could no longer speak, gritted her silver teeth and endured it, without the slightest intention of begging for mercy. Please forgive me and I'll let you go. I won't beg for mercy. This time, I want you to admit defeat. Let me admit defeat. Tina, are you serious? If you want me to admit defeat, you alone are not enough. At least, multiply by 10,000. I may not lose. Quote. Well, anyway, I will never give in this time. Really? Then I'm going to be serious. After he finished speaking, Li Eng's smile became brighter and the attack became more violent. Tina involuntarily let out a muffled voice. Her beautiful eyes were stubborn, her expression became more and more blurred, and she was almost numb. She was still stubborn and didn't beg for mercy, and even she was almost knocked out by this fierce attack twice. She was stubborn, still biting the tip of her tongue. Li Eng's offensive went from stormy to gentle, and seeing the stubborn Tina, he still couldn't help hurting the other party. This stubborn silly girl. The corners of his mouth curled into an arc, with a smile, feeling a little fulfilled in his heart. However, he will not admit defeat. Immediately. Although the offensive is soft, it is still on the offensive. Before you know it, time flies by. Tina was already numb. Mei Mei looked at Li Eng with heavy eyelids, and muttered, I haven't lost yet. The words just fell. Zhao's good, her eyes were slightly closed, and she fell into a deep sleep. She is so tired. Li Eng's offensive also stopped. Looking at Tina, who was directly beaten to sleep by the offensive, he couldn't help laughing. This was the first time he had encountered such a scene. Stupid girl, go to sleep. Li Eng rubbed Tina's pink hair and whispered. I haven't lost yet. Tina was still muttering those words. This little girl. Li Eng laughed, and when he saw Tina's stubborn and delicate face, he felt a burst of emotion. In this kind of battle, go straight to sleep. This was his first time seeing him. Obviously, Tina couldn't stand his offensive. It's just that he still refuses to admit defeat verbally. On the side, Hancock and Tautu were both stunned. They looked at themselves subconsciously, unimaginable, if it were them, they would have been begging for mercy long ago. And LT, 39 and GT. Chapter 548-Warmth. Return. Chapter 548-Warmth. Chapter 549-Accompanying you to the sea. It's so comfortable. Tautu stretched out her slender jade arm, exhaled heavily, and said. For a time, her devilish figure was revealed in Li Eng's eyes. Look what, rascal. Tautu immediately noticed Li Eng's gaze, blushed slightly, and said in a low voice. Husband looks at his wife, isn't it right and proper? How can you say hooligan? With a smile, Li Eng quickly pecked Tautu's cheek. Immediately, Tautu's face became more and more rosy and full of blood. The three girls all showed different expressions, which made Li Eng look dumbfounded. In terms of stature, Hancock ranks first, unshakable. Furthermore, it was Peach Rabbit, and finally Tina. But even Tina has a very devilish figure, which basically belongs to the perfect figure in the heart of a woman. Just because Hancock's figure and face are more perfect than perfect. Therefore, in comparison, it can be seen that Tina's figure is slightly inferior. It's almost all done. Hancock said with a sweet smile on his delicate pretty face. Her delicate white skin was like jade, with ruddy bloodshots, and the white was rosy. For a time, it seemed that everything in the world was eclipsed. It's like a scene of 100 flowers blooming. Even Tautu and Tina were attracted. Little fairy. Tautu looked at Hancock's delicate face and said involuntarily. Even I was almost hooked. Tina looked at Hancock's delicate face and the devil's figure, showing a bit of envy, and said, I'm so envious, Hancock, your beauty and figure. Igia is the most beautiful. With a sweet smile, Hancock shook his black hair and said. You still put it on. Li Eng took a photo of Hancock's two groups directly, and said angrily. Hem. Hancock snorted, blushed, glared at Li Eng, and said, You bad guy, wait, I can't spare you. Why can't you spare me? Do you want to fight again? Liang leaned against Hancock's jade white ear and smiled. Huh. Hancock snorted, looking a little lack of confidence. Another fight. This is killing her. She couldn't bear the fatigue of another fight. Immediately, her beautiful eyes shifted, looked in other directions, coughed dryly, and said slowly, Well, I'll spare you this time. Thanks to the mercy of the Empress. Liang laughed and said with a smile. If you are acquainted, I won't care about you. Hancock smiled, and his beautiful eyes were curved like a crescent moon, very pretty and moving. Okay, 3, your massage is over. Liang twisted his arm, smiled at the 3 girls, and said. So fast. Hancock still didn't know what to do. And Tina's expression was very dripping. About to be separated from Liang for half a month, her heart is empty. Although there were several crazy battles, it was still difficult to make up for the disappointment in her heart. What's the matter? Tautu was very keenly aware of Tina's mood swings, rubbed the other person's pink hair, and whispered. Reluctant. Tina looked at Liang, her eyes full of reluctance, said. What's the matter? It's not a year and a half, it's just half a month. Tautu laughed, soothing Tina's emotions, said. But there was no way to restore Tina's mood. See. Tautu was also very helpless in her heart. If it were her, I'm afraid it would be the same as Tina. Chapter 549 accompanying you to the sea. Tautu was also very helpless in her heart. If it were her, I'm afraid it would be the same as Tina. Although verbally comforting, she would be very reluctant when it happened to her. Otherwise, so be it. Liang looked at Tina's reluctant expression, his heart softened, and he immediately suggested, Then we will accompany you to the sea, what do you think? Huh. Tina's beautiful eyes flickered, and she couldn't hide her excitement. All the low mood, all disappeared without a trace. If Liang was with him, wouldn't we could still be together. This proposal is really good. Why didn't we think of it? Hancock and Tautu also showed sweet smiles and said. Anyway, in Marivando, there are not too many things about them. Wouldn't it be more beautiful to go sailing with Tina for a while? Moreover, it was rather boring to stay in Marivando all the time. Then it's decided. Liang laughed and said, Accompany Tina to the sea together. After completing the task, return to Marivando, then go to Daughter Island and bring all those little girls with you. Yeah. Hancock's beautiful eyes flickered and nodded, without any objection. This proposal is very good. You can also enjoy the scenery along the way. It's not that you have to stay in Marivando all the time. People are stupid. It's better to go out for a walk. Tautu nodded and agreed. Now, there's no need to separate. Liang looked at Tina with a smile and said. Yeah. Tina's beautiful eyes were a little red, and she rushed over and hugged Liang tightly, not letting go, her slender jade arms wrapped around Liang's neck. The two are, frankly, relative to each other. For a while. Liang reacted again and said helplessly, Tina, you are playing with fire, do you know? Too happy to be out of control. Tina said in a choked tone. Liang patted Tina's pink back with a smile on his face. Okay, let's take a rest and leave tomorrow. Hancock said with a sweet smile on his pretty face. That's right, at night, why don't you sleep? Tautu nodded, looked at the pitch-black environment by the window, and said. Do what? Liang's eyes flashed and he said meaningfully, There are too many things that can be done. You bastard, it's so bad. It's been almost 3 days, and you're still not satisfied. Hancock's beautiful eyes were round, and he said angrily. She couldn't bear another battle. Although after the massage, she did recover a lot, and she was no longer sore. However, her spirit was still quite exhausted. If there is another battle, she can't bear it. I surrendered. Tautu quickly raised her jade arm and said weakly. She couldn't take it either. I I surrender too. Tina May said with a bit of shyness. I didn't know just now, who wouldn't admit defeat. Li Ang leaned against Tina's crystal clear little ear, breathed a sigh of relief, and smiled. Well, that's different. Tina's words were a little unnatural, and her whole body was a little weak. Originally, her delicate and fair ears showed a rosy blood color. At the beginning, she was the one who was about to be separated before she mustered up the courage. Now, knowing that there is no need to separate, she can't stand Li Ang's storm-like attack. NLT, 42 and GT. Chapter 550_Vegapunk found it. The night time passed quickly. After more than 2 days of crazy battles, the three girls couldn't support their spirits anymore, and May took a good night's sleep. Although under Li Ang's massage, their bodies did relieve a bit of exhaustion, but mentally, they couldn't be relieved, and they could only make up for it by resting. At night, there was a sound of insects chirping. Marin Vando. The lights are always on, and some offices are still carrying out tasks. Of course, most of the Navy has already laid down. During the day, the building needs to be repaired, and the tiredness is not enough. Naturally, there is no need to say more about the quality of sleep at night. There was a black screen on the horizon, and a crescent moon exuded a hazy halo. The temperature in the air has also plummeted, and occasionally a cold mist of water can be felt. The sea breeze was blowing, and it was bitingly cold, making people shiver. 790, the next day. Night dissipated, and the sun rose from the east, bringing a warm glow inside. Marin Fando looks quite lively, and the damaged buildings are constantly being repaired by manpower. Come on, guys over there, don't dawdle. At your speed, how long will it take for us to complete the work? Be quick with your hands and feet, and stop being lazy. We have more tasks to do next. Brothers, hurry up and don't waste any more time. The people above have ordered that we must complete our work within 3 days. If you don't want to be punished, then work harder. Quote. A group of navies are repairing the damaged naval headquarters. The lively and noisy atmosphere suddenly spread throughout the Marin Vatican. Early in the morning. In a certain room. Li Ang, Hancock, Tautu, and Tina were also ready to set off and leave Marin Fando for the time being. The purpose was naturally to accompany Tina to capture the so-called pirate. For the four of them, it was just a trip, not a mission at all. Completely, there is no danger. How can this be considered a task? It's been delayed for days. Tina pretty blushed, and said a little embarrassedly. Since the warring states issued the order, she did not dispatch immediately, but delayed for 3 days, which made her, who has always been very strict with tasks, feel a strange feeling in her heart. Immediately, she looked at Li Ang with her beautiful eyes and found a reason to comfort herself. Well, yes, this guy is all to blame. Let's go, have you finished packing and salute? Li Ang looked at Hancock, Tautu, and Tina in front of him and asked with a smile. Tina wore a navy uniform, as did Tautu, showing their tall devil figure in Li Ang's sight. A pair of straight long legs, without a trace of fat. Hancock, on the other hand, was wearing a purple slit cheongsam, with beautiful legs as white as jade, with her swaying an infinite allure. A delicate blushing face and beautiful eyes are full of charm in the blink of an eye, making people unable to extricate themselves and completely unable to resist her charm. A head of black and smooth hair spilled on the back, charming eyes, and a proud figure, as if to break through the cheongsam, showing a perfect arc line with the slender waist. The whole person is unbelievably beautiful. It's all packed and ready to go. Hancock's pretty face was blushing, his beautiful eyes flashed, and he nodded. Chapter 550_Vegapunk found. NLT, 43 and GT. Hancock's pretty face was blushing, his beautiful eyes flashed, and he nodded. Not much salute, enough is enough. They are not those women who need too many skincare products. Originally, they are naturally beautiful and do not need maintenance at all, so salutes save a lot. Alright, let's go. Li Ang's eyes flickered and he said with a smile. With one step, he walked ahead and pushed the door open. Behind them, the three women followed closely, holding some small luggage in their hands, smiling on their faces, chatting with each other, chatting happily. It's like a family going on a trip. The atmosphere is quite harmonious. Only. Before taking 2 steps, Li Ang saw a familiar figure coming quickly. Immediately. Li Ang waved his hand helplessly, turned his head to look at the three of Hancock, and said, "You guys go to the coast first and find a warship. I'll finish the matter here, and I'll be there later, very soon." Yeah. Hancock, Tautu, and Tina nodded gently, and the three gradually left. At this time, Li Ang looked at Vegapunk in front of him and said impatiently, "Why are you here again?" Cough cough. Vegapunk coughed, maybe in a hurry to leave, his face flushed red, he was out of breath, and his breathing was very uneven. He looked at Li Ang in front of him, and hurriedly said, I still can't think of the answer, ask for confusion. You came all the way, ruined my way, just want to ask the answer. Li Ang showed a smile and said. Looking at it this way, he saw Vegapunk in front of him, with bloodshot eyes. Obviously, the other party has been studying for a while without taking a break. Scientists are crazy. I've looked at birds and I've come up with other ways, but I can't come up with a concrete idea. Without a complete idea, I can't make it at all. Although I have an idea, the idea is still given by you. So, I just take your idea, and I can't say that it was my own. It's too far from constructing a complete idea. I'm sure you can give me an inspiration. Vegapunk looked at Li Ang very solemnly and said. What should be said? In fact, I have already said, the rest, you have to try slowly. Don't you call yourself a genius scientist? Are you stumped by this? This goes against the title of genius scientist. Li Ang shook his head and smiled lightly. I've racked my brains and still can't think of any way forward. Vegapunk shook his head and looked at Li Ang in front of him. His eyes were bloodshot and he looked very hideous. 4.8. Then it depends on your own wisdom. Li Ang pointed to his head and said with a smile, if you can't do it, then give it up. If you give up researching this matter, you are still a genius scientist. If you are defeated by this matter, you will not be able to break free from the shadow of failure in the future. Quote. So, think for yourself. If it really doesn't inspire, then you have to learn to give up. I won't give you any advice, and I won't say anything more. Everything depends on your own ability. I will not intervene and will not intervene in it. So, you came to me, just a wrong decision. Quote. These words. Let Vegapunk froze for a while, gritted his teeth, seemed a little unwilling, and said, this idea is too perfect. I don't want to give up, never want to give up. NLT, 44 and GT. Chapter 551 going to see. Then what are you talking about here? Li Ang's eyes flashed, looking at Vegapunk who looked very unwilling in front of him, and smiled, the place you should go is your research room, not come to me. I really can't think of any way. If I don't come to you, I won't have the possibility to move forward. Can't you really reveal some more information? I know, you must have seen such a machine, so you can say it with good reason. But I have never seen it, and I have never learned about it. It's basically impossible, even for me, to build a machine of this magnitude with just an idea. Vegapunk looked at Li Ang and said firmly. Who made you do such abstruse things in the first place? The corners of Li Ang's mouth curled into an arc, and he smiled. Well. Vegapunk's face changed slightly, his eyes widened, and there was a sense of surprise in his heart. I didn't ask you to build a flying machine that can carry many people from the beginning. I just gave you an inspiration. Where to start, where to proceed, isn't all this what you need to think about yourself? Li Ang smiled and said bluntly. Yes. Vegapunk's eyes flashed, and 23 nodded solemnly. From the very beginning, his thinking has entered a misunderstanding. It's like a child who wants to run before he even learns to walk. Is it possible? One thing definitely needs a buffering process. If you don't invent a machine that can carry many people, then you can simulate a bird, and you only need to carry one person to fly. A machine that carries one person to fly. Vegapunk's eyes were lost, his lips trembled, and he whispered to himself. Such an invention will definitely reduce the difficulty a lot. There is no need to think too much. As long as you study birds, you can effectively build a machine that can carry one person to fly, which is normal. Go down this road. Possible. You will be able to find a way to realize Li Ang's idea. Do you understand? It's only a cycle and a gradual process that can lead to ideas. Li Ang smiled when he saw Vegapunk's sudden realization. Naturally, Vegapunk's wisdom need not be said, it must be recognized. After getting some preliminary reminders from him, it can be regarded as enlightened, and it will not continue to dig into the horns. Thank you. Vegapunk took a deep look at Li Ang, took a deep breath, bowed, and said. Okay, if there's nothing wrong, then I'm leaving. By the way, let me tell you, during this time, I will leave Marin Fando. I'll be back in half a month. At that time, I hope you can succeed. Li Ang patted Vegapunk on the shoulder and smiled. Definitely. Vegapunk's expression was firm, his eyes flashed a little frantically, and he nodded. If he just studies something that can make a person fly, he is still very confident. I'll leave first, see you in half a month. Li Ang waved his hand and turned around, leaving Vegapunk behind. In situ. Vegapunk looked at Li Ang's back with firm eyes and said, I will definitely succeed, although your level is higher than mine. However, I will never admit defeat, I must surpass you. In his heart, Li Ang has been placed in a higher position than him. Coast. A warship is ready. On the deck. Hancock, Tautu, and Tina are all ready. Chapter 541 going to sea. NLT, 45 and GT. Hancock, Tautu, and Tina are all ready. The original navy on the warship was also driven away by Tina. In this line of tasks, too many people are not good. Anyway, it is enough to have a group of 4 of them. To deal with the mere little pirates, the 4 of them are enough. It may be difficult for Tina to deal with it alone, but aside from Tina, anyone can easily crush the target person of this trip. Not to mention Li Ang. Hancock, as the Chihuahua, is definitely not weak. As an alternate general, Tautu's strength is self-evident. Only Tina is only a colonel, and her strength has not yet reached the level of a lieutenant general. But with Li Ang around, she can easily complete the task without having to do anything at all. Soon. On the deck. Hancock's 3 daughters looked at Li Ang, who came not far away, and said with a chuckle, here it is. Li Ang boarded the warship step by step, and the domineering directly spread, covering the entire warship. There was no one but Hancock's 3 daughters, which made him smile. This line is not only for the task, the fun of their play is the most important. As for the task, it was just done casually. Sail. Li Ang looked at the 3 daughters and smiled. Didn't you come? The 3 girls rolled their eyes in unison, and glanced at Li Ang with all kinds of style, and said. Hearing this, Li Ang smiled and didn't care. He walked to the rudder, controlled the rudder with both hands, set sail, and prepared to control the warship to drive away from the shore. He glanced in the direction of Marin Fando, and saw a lot of gazes. A group of navies all came to watch. Seeing Li Ang's departure, the heavy heart was finally able to breathe. This monster is finally leaving. Yeah, if he continues to stay here, won't we be careful in what we do in the future? I can't bear such pressure. Fortunately, the monster has left. However, can I still hear his piano in the future? 797. Alas, the worst thing is that I can't hear the wonderful sound of the piano. I don't know why, but now, I hope he can stay in Marivendo forever. Quote. Many navies whispered and talked. For Li Ang's strength, they showed fear. But for the level of Li Ang's piano, then they will show a very fanatical love. Li Ang was in Marin Fando, and they could occasionally hear the voice of that day. If Li Ang leaves, it will be quite difficult for them to hear this voice again. It's a pity. Countless people sighed secretly, shaking their heads and looking a little depressed. Just like the Sea Kings, they were also deeply fascinated by Li Ang's piano sound. With Li Ang's departure, these will naturally not appear again. Go to work. A colonel withdrew his gaze and shouted loudly. Immediately, everyone threw themselves back into their work. On top of a building, Sengoku stood by the window of the office, watching the picture of the warship gradually leaving. His face was calm, and he whispered to himself, I guessed it, this monster will definitely leave as well. Now, this mission will basically not fail. Quote. After thinking about it, he thought of Vegapunk again. I don't know, what stage is the Doctor's progress now? Chapter 542 _ Encounter with Pirates. The sea is vast and boundless. In the sun, the golden halo is reflected on the sea, shining with dazzling golden light. A warship pushed aside the seawater on both sides and sailed at a terrifying speed. On the deck, Li Ang found a chair, lay on the chair, wore sunglasses, and basked in the sun. The sea breeze blows in and makes people feel refreshed. The icy sea breeze and the warm sunshine are like being at the junction of fire and water, with occasional warmth and a hint of coolness. Ta-ta-ta. There was the sound of crisp footsteps. Hancock, Tautu, and Tina appeared beside Li Ang. They also changed into casual clothes, but they still couldn't hide their proud figures. The sun was blazing down. They wore long clothes and long sleeves, with a delicate little hat on their heads. They did not dare to face the sun directly, for fear of being tanned. Husband, there seems to be a pirate ship coming. Hancock's beautiful eyes flashed, looking at the sea in front of the warship, and said in a low voice. Pirate ship. Li Ang's face was calm and he said casually, don't worry about it, if they don't avoid it, then sink them, there is no need to keep them. However, in general, they should not take the initiative to provoke warships. Not necessarily, the direction they are sailing seems to be facing us. Tautu shook her hair and said slowly. Who are you going to deal with them? I'm too lazy to move. Li Ang waved his hand and said with a smile. I'll come. With a smile, Tautu stepped out and stood at the front of the warship, holding a knife in one hand, looking ahead. Her gaze suddenly became focused. A fierce breath spread out from her body. Amazing sword energy, very attractive. So strong. Tina's beautiful eyes flashed and she whispered. Hancock also showed a sweet smile. Such strength is also approaching her. Only Li Ang acted accustomed to it, still lying on the chair, motionless, looking very lazy. This guy. Hancock and Tina glanced at Li Ang and said angrily. Come on. Tautu's eyes narrowed slightly, her pink lips slightly parted, and said. She gradually held the handle of the knife in both hands, watching a pirate ship in front of her keep approaching, her expression indifferent. Actually, they dare to take the initiative to provoke them. This is the way this group of pirates seeks to kill themselves. Front. There is a skull flag hanging high on a pirate ship, with a novel design, probably some unknown pirate group, and even Tautu has no impression at all. Then, get rid of them. There was a meaningful smile on Tautu's face, the power in the body rolled and flowed slowly, and it was forced out directly from the body, and the whole body also exuded a tyrannical momentum. Her slender fingertips held the handle of the knife, her steps were steady and motionless. The pirate ship is getting closer. From the first 500 meters, it gradually became 400. 300 meters. 200 meters. ... It's too much trouble. Li Ang shook his head, the corners of his mouth moved slightly, and he said to himself, if I had known, it would be better for me to come, to save them from living longer, which is an eyesore. If he did it, he could destroy the entire ship with one knife in an area 1,000 meters away. Moreover, now he also controls the first generation of ghosts. Chapter 552-Encounter with Pirates. Moreover, now he also controls the first generation of ghosts. After the blessing of the first generation of ghosts, the whole body is covered with blood-holy clothes, and the power he can explode will be even more fierce. It is not a problem at all to destroy a pirate ship in the area ahead. Before, with an ordinary blade, the distance was more than 2,000 meters. So, what if I use the first generation Gito now, and I have the blood-holy garment? This made Liang feel a little curious in his heart. Has it started yet? At this time, Liang opened his eyes slightly, raised his sunglasses, looked in Taotu's direction, and smiled. I see. Taotu held the handle of the knife in both hands and cut it down slowly. Call out. A sharp and dazzling slash was forced out from the tip of the knife. A terrifying aura filled the air, piercing the air, and brought a sharp sound. The pirate ship was only a few dozen meters away from them. At this distance, you can see a group of wild pirates standing on the deck of the pirate ship, screaming loudly and loudly. It's a warship, and, I didn't expect it, it's a warship with only 4 people. This is really cheap for us, brothers. If we loot this warship, we will gain too much. And, have you noticed? On the deck of the warship, those 3 women are so beautiful. They are the most beautiful women I have ever seen in the world. Brothers, get ready, kill men, grab supplies, and keep women. Quote. A group of pirates made a vow, looked at the warship ahead with excitement, and shouted. They held knives, pistols, etc., and even carried out cannons, ready to bombard at all times. Who would have thought that there are only 4 people in a warship? This is simply a blessing for us. Diaresis isn't it? The people in the Navy headquarters have already fallen to this point. Since the battle with Whitebeard, they have been so sluggish. Even the people from a warship are dissatisfied. This time, we've been cheapened for nothing. Brothers, in a moment, you'll all be energized. I just met at the beginning, and I plan to turn around and leave. Fortunately, I didn't leave, otherwise, I would have missed this great opportunity. No wonder, these 4 guys don't have eyes. There are only 4 of them, and they dare to hold the flag of the Navy. I don't know whether to live or die. Quote. When this group of pirates laughed arrogantly. At the same time, a dazzling slash, magnified infinitely in their eyes. The speed is fast, and it flashes away, reaching the position in front of them. What is this? A pirate's lips trembled, shivering, his eyes widened, and he shouted. He felt a terrifying force approaching his body. Getting closer. In their eyes, all Li's parts were left with only a white halo that could not be erased. Other than that, nothing else. No. A pirate rolled his throat, smelling the threat of death, and he roared. In his eyes, there was a flash of unwillingness and fear. How can I die here? I'm the man who wants to become One Piece. Captain, what the hell is this? We seem to have provoked someone who can't be provoked. Come on, let the helmsman change direction. Don't get hit. Once you get hit, we're done. Quote. It's too late. The helmsman's lips parted slightly, his expression full of fear, and he whispered. In their eyes, this dazzling light, infinitely enlarged, has approached the edge of the bow, and is about to hit. In this moment of time. Even if God comes, it can't change the result and fate of this ship. Chapter 553 destroyed in an instant. Hurry up and control the direction. A pirate shouted with fear on his face. Facing death, the fear in their hearts is infinitely magnified. Especially the slash in front of them gave each of them the breath of death. If they can't escape, then all of them will die. There is no other way. The helmsman looked down, slumped on the ground, his face ashen. See the look of the helmsman. All the pirates in the audience gritted their teeth and cursed. This damn bastard is actually scared to death. If we don't hurry, we're all going to die here. I don't want to die, I'm not famous yet. Damn, why, we shouldn't provoke this warship long ago. Now it seems that among the four of them, there is a terrifying navy. It's over, this time we're done playing, and we were so stupid that we took the initiative to deliver it to the door. Quote. The face of a group of pirates was pale, and their faces were unlovable. If there is regret medicine in this world, they will definitely not choose to provoke this warship. As early as thousands of meters away, they have seen this warship. Originally, they were all about to dodge, but in the end, when they saw that there were only 4 people on the deck, they breathed a sigh of relief and sailed without fear. Pirates who have just gone to sea will naturally be more confident with 350. They are just like that, thinking that their strength is already quite tyrannical. Even if it can't compete with some high-level navy, at least it is more than enough to deal with some ordinary navy. No, this scene appeared, which scared every one of them. Front. A sharp slash collided head-on at the bow of the ship. Boom. A loud noise swept through the ears of each of them. The entire bow was smashed by this slash. Pieces of sawdust slammed into the surroundings, scattered on the sea, and floated. Ah! A pirate was the first to be affected, and the whole person was directly torn into blood clots by the terrifying force, and threw them around, blood splashing everywhere. The bloody smell was strong and wafted out. Everyone looked at this scene in fear, and watched helplessly. A sharp slash approached their body, and they had no choice. They wanted to escape, but they couldn't move. Time seemed to freeze at this moment. Their feet were as hard as if they were pressed down by 10,000 caddies of stones, unable to move. What they saw in their eyes was a dazzling light that was destroying their entire pirate ship. Boom! With another loud noise, the bow of the ship was directly pierced, and a huge hole appeared. Most of the people were unsteady and fell to the side next to them. Silence. Faced with death, they didn't yell because they didn't have time to yell. The speed of this slash is very terrifying. Pieces of sawdust fly around. Puff, puff, puff. The sawdust pierced through the bodies of some pirates, causing their eyes to be stunned and unable to believe it. They actually died in the aftermath of this attack. No, I don't want to die. A pirate's eyes widened, and he shouted unwillingly. Boom. The slash is gone in a flash. Chapter 543 _ destroyed in an instant. The slash is gone in a flash. A loud bang. Huge cracks appeared on the entire sea surface, and obvious traces were split open by this sharp slash. Whoa. The sea splashed up, and then fell to the calm sea, causing bursts of ripples. On the sea. A few pieces of wood were faintly visible, moving with the wind and floating on the sea. A pirate ship just disappeared without a trace, and was completely destroyed by Tautu's move, which directly broke up the whole ship and completely destroyed it. This kind of lethality makes people shudder. And everyone on the pirate ship was killed on the spot, and no survivors could survive this fierce slash by Tautu. They couldn't even keep their bodies, they were directly destroyed, turned into dust, and buried in this sea area. No wonder they were blind and provoked people they couldn't afford to offend. A warship carries 4 people, and they don't even think about the weirdness of things. On the contrary, it rushed up directly. Such a person will die when he dies, no one can blame others. Warship, on deck. Tautu slowly retracted the saber in his hand, showing a sweet smile, looked at Liang, and said softly, "What do you think of this move?" The current she is completely different from the fierce-looking her just now. She was like a leader just now, with a terrifying pressure. But now, in front of Liang, she looks like a little girl who needs protection, and she is very lively in every move. Not bad. Liang said slowly with a smile. Of course, in his eyes, such an attack was nothing at all. However, for Tautu, there must be some encouragement. I feel the same way. Tautu nodded with a sweet smile. One trick, I can't even find the boat. Tina's beautiful eyes flashed with surprise, said. This is the strength of the alternate general, Tina, you have to work hard. In the future, the position of the alternate general will also be part of you. Tautu laughed, looked in Tina's direction, and said. Me, forget it, I don't count on it for the rest of my life. Tina gave a wry smile, shook her pink hair, and said. With our husband, do you still need to work hard? Hancock's face is full of smiles, revealing white teeth, red lips slightly open, and his delicate face is full of charm. The sea breeze blew her face, curling up her black and smooth hair, and even brought her figure and delicate face into the sight of the three of them. I'm so envious. Tautu and Tina both lost their minds and joked. The two of them are indeed envious of Hancock's appearance and figure. Although they are often joking, they still recognize Hancock's charm. The title of the most beautiful woman in the world is not for nothing. Okay, after we're done, we can continue sailing with peace of mind. Li Ang said slowly with a smile. This group of pirates is really rampant. We didn't take the initiative to find them, but they actually took the initiative to collide with us. This is really, seeking death. Tautu said with a hint of interest with a smile. She also expressed admiration for the courage of these pirates. Even if she didn't take action, anyone here, including Tina, could completely sink the pirate ship to the bottom of the sea in an instant. The funny thing is, those ignorant pirates thought they could win. But now, death is already dead, and Tautu quickly put this matter behind him. Destroying a pirate group is nothing new. For any veteran navy, it is impossible to know how many pirate groups have been destroyed. If you keep everything in your heart, then being a navy is quite tiring. Chapter 554-Sabara Island. In the sun. The sea shone with golden light, which was very dazzling. Accompanied by the sailing of a warship, it broke the original calm of the big sea. The sea was rippling with ripples, and waves of waves spread around. This warship is naturally Li Ang and Hancock and other 3 women, a total of 4 people. Several days have passed since they left Marin Vando. In the past few days, except for the occasional encounter with some pirates who do not know whether to live or die, they have not encountered any serious shipwrecks, and the journey has been unimpeded. Now, they are about to arrive at their destination, Sabara Island. According to the Marshal of the Warring States period, the news that came out of this island before indicates that there is a group of pirates haunting this area. I don't know if they have left now. On the deck, Tina looked at an island ahead, her beautiful eyes flashing, and she whispered. According to the information provided by the Warring States period, the group of pirates were haunted around this area. However, it stands to reason that this group of pirates should have left here. It's been nearly a week, unless this group of pirates thinks they are invincible. Otherwise, they will definitely transfer the base to prevent the capture of the navy. Not necessarily. With a smile, Li Ang shook his head and said. Why? Tina turned to look at Li Ang and asked. It's impossible, do you really want to go to war with the navy? You think, what did they do to cause the navy to arrest them? Li Ang smiled meaningfully and said slowly. 3,000 children were arrested and forced to practice the piano. Tina's eyes flashed and she replied. Hearing this, Li Ang smiled even more and explained. So, where did they get the boat to transport 3,000 children? You know, even if it's 3,000 children, it won't be possible in a while. Transferring such a huge target will definitely be discovered by others. If it was me, I would continue to stay on this island. However, it will not be so blatant. At the same time, to create the illusion that we are leaving here. In this way, the Navy's attention can be effectively diverted to other places. What do you think? Yes. Tina's eyes flashed, and she nodded quickly, suddenly realizing. 3,000 children, such a huge target, cannot be transferred by transfer. Over the course of a week, even if they had moved, it was too late to deal with the traces. As long as there are witnesses, their transfer will be in vain. So, if the captain of this pirate group is a smart man, he knows how to choose. He will never leave here easily, and the exposure will be even greater. In that case, there is not much difference between transferring and not transferring. So, we have to dock and enter this island to get the answer. What we say now is just speculation, and there is no evidence to show it. Li Ang looked at the island in front of his eyes and said, "The island is getting closer and closer, and at the speed of a warship, it doesn't take a few minutes to reach the edge of the coast." Whoa! The sea water opened up and spread out around. Soon, the warship approached the edge of the coast. Li Ang led Hancock, Tautu, and Tina, three daughters, very smoothly, and they landed ashore. After dropping the warship, Li Ang looked at the towering buildings in front of the island and said, "This island seems to have a fairly developed economy." It was a surprise, I didn't expect it. Tina nodded in agreement. Hancock, Tautu and Tina gradually put on formal clothes. Chapter 554-Sabara Island. Hancock, Tautu and Tina gradually put on formal clothes. Tautu and Tina are naturally wearing navy uniforms, while Hancock is wearing a noble purple slit cheongsam, which is very conspicuous. Walking on the road, turning back, it is definitely 100% of the kind. Let's go to the island and see what's real. Li Ang smiled and didn't care, said. Yeah. Hancock and Tina nodded and said. Under the leadership of Li Ang, the four of them crossed a small forest in front of them and gradually saw the whole island. After opening a grass, Li Ang looked forward with some emotion in his eyes, and said, "This is an island with a developed economy. I am afraid that such an island will not be less than 1 million people. In this way, it can also explain the source of the 3,000 children. If they were all from this island, why didn't their family resist?" Looking from a distance, you can still vaguely see that in the streets with many buildings in front, groups of dark pedestrians are walking around the streets. Seeking flowers 0. The whole island seemed very lively and noisy. This is completely different from the island that was devastated by pirates in Li Ang's imagination. Hancock, Tautu, and Tina also showed some surprised expressions, covering their red lips and looking at the bustling and lively island in front of them. It always feels that they are somewhat out of tune with the island. Where's the pirates? Tina's pink lips parted slightly, her pretty face full of confusion. Could it be that the Warring States Marshal gave the wrong news? It shouldn't be. Tautu pondered for a moment and said directly, "This kind of news is absolutely impossible to go wrong. That is, have these pirates left this island?" "I don't know, just walk over and ask." Li Ang said with a calm face and a faint smile. That's right, if there are pirates, it's impossible for the residents inside to know nothing. If they really don't know anything, there are only two possibilities. Hancock's beautiful eyes flashed, his long eyelashes trembled, and he nodded. Which two possibilities? Tina's pink lips parted slightly, and she asked curiously. The first type, everyone, is ruled by pirates. They can't help themselves and dare not say it. The second type, they really don't know. If it's the second type, then things are a bit interesting. Hancock said with a sweet smile. If it is the second, it can be concluded that the message is wrong. In the end where the error occurred, it is self-evident. Of course. It's too early to say anything, you have to ask to know the answer. Let's go, it's still too early to think about anything. What if, in the end, it's empty? Isn't it a waste of time? So, don't worry about the task, it's just an incidental. The main thing is that we just have a good time. Li Ang looked at the three pretty fairies in front of him and smiled. That's right. Hancock tapped his chin lightly and smiled. Tasks or something is not the main thing for her. The first thing is to be happy. Just be happy, anyway, isn't that the original purpose of going to sea? Chapter 555-Trouble. It doesn't matter, anyway, no matter how complicated the matter is, we are only responsible for exterminating these pirates. If the matter and the news are wrong, I can completely return the task. Tina also showed a smile and said, however, any mission with incorrect information can be returned to the Navy headquarters, and there is no need to take risks. Of course. For them, there is basically no danger. It's just that if the task is a little more troublesome and the information doesn't match, she won't waste time here anymore. Even if it is an order issued by the warring states, as long as the information does not match, there is no need for Tina to continue to execute it. Let's go. Li Ang waved his hand and walked towards the bustling market ahead with a smile. Behind him, Hancock, Tautu, and Tina followed closely, looking left and right, Maimu with a somewhat relaxed mood, casually watching the surrounding environment. I have to admit that this island is still relatively prosperous. At least, the streets are full of people everywhere. Just entered the market. There were bursts of loud noises in Li Ang's ears, and the streets on the left and right sides were filled with stalls, which seemed to be quite lively. There are also shops, all decorated very luxuriously. Looking at it this way, there is absolutely no trace of the 750 that has fought. If it is said that there is a pirate group hidden here, Li Ang himself has some doubts. Is the message wrong? No matter how you look at it, there is no place where you don't want to hide pirates. Moreover, the pirate group controls 3,000 children. Could it be that the people here don't know anything? With such doubts, Li Ang caught a passerby and asked, brother, by the way, I want to ask you something, has there been any major incident here recently? The big event. The middle-aged old man shook his head and answered with a puzzled face, no, I've been here all the time recently, and I've never heard of any major events. What's wrong? Are you here? He glanced at Tautu and Tina behind Li Ang. This uniform can only be worn by the Navy. Immediately, he showed a bit of awe and said, Lord Navy, what are you doing? It's all right, you can go now. Li Ang waved his hand and smiled lightly. All right then. The middle-aged man was still almost unable to look away. These three fairies are simply too beautiful. It made him look so ugly that he almost couldn't extricate himself. Fortunately, after being reminded by Li Ang, he only looked back 3 steps and left here very reluctantly. You guys. Li Ang turned his head helplessly, looked at the 3 girls, and smiled. He also noticed that on both sides of the street, the gazes of pedestrians, obviously, all of them hit Hancock, Tautu, and Tina. If it wasn't for seeing the Navy uniforms on Tautu and Tina, I'm afraid there would be countless people who would strike up a conversation. This is really quite a hassle. Wherever they go, if someone pays attention, how can they find clues? It's not our fault. Hancock showed a smile and whispered. Her every move carried an air of nobility and elegance, coupled with the devil's figure, delicate face, and twinkling eyes, it almost took away the soul of a person. Suddenly, there was a sound of gasping for breath around. Both men and women, there is a love in their eyes, and they are completely convinced by Hancock's charm. Got to find a mask for you to put on. Li Ang said helplessly. All right then. Tautu can only nod. If they don't wear masks, it will be very difficult for them to continue to trace the clues. Chapter 555-Trouble. Tautu can only nod. If they don't wear masks, it will be very difficult for them to continue to trace the clues. And, it's easy to startle the snake. If there really is a pirate group here, then their appearance will directly scare those pirates away. Once the pirates are silenced, there will be no traces to search for. It can also be very troublesome to find. A few minutes later, Li Ang walked out of a shop with 3 daughters. At this time, on Hancock's delicate face, he has CDCE put on a pink enchantress mask, which looks relatively normal and will not attract the attention of others. Tautu and Tina also put away their Navy uniforms and changed into ordinary women's clothes, with a silver and white mask on their cheeks. The delicate faces of the 3 were effectively blocked. This time, Li Ang walked on the street with the 3 daughters, so it wouldn't be too conspicuous. That's how it works. Liang looked at the three girls in front of him and smiled. At this time, Hancock, Taotu, and Tina, except for the tall and devilish figure, their delicate faces have been completely covered. Perhaps because of his stature, Hancock's return rate is still quite high. But it's not as scary as it was at the beginning. Going out, you will usher in a 100% return rate. The charm of Igia is unstoppable. Hancock said with a sweet smile. Come on, serious business matters. Liang rubbed Hancock's black hair, disrupting the other party's smooth hair, making it look messy. This made Hancock very dissatisfied and said angrily, Why? Let you have a long memory. Liang laughed and said. You bad guy will bully people. Hancock rubbed his hair, and soon the messy hair became neat again. He glanced at Liang angrily, and his beautiful eyes were full of anger. On her mask, only a pair of big smart eyes were exposed. Liang can still tell when he sees it, just by looking at Hancock's big eyes. He can tell the difference. Taking off the mask, she is definitely a beautiful fairy. Okay, Lady Empress, I was wrong, please forgive me. Liang looked at Hancock in front of him and smiled. This time, I'll spare you one more time, there's no next time, you know. Hancock coughed dryly, patted Liang on the shoulder, and said earnestly. Understood. Liang smiled, holding Hancock's soft little hand, and said, let's go. Yeah. Hancock's delicate streak hidden in the mask has a bit of crimson. If this picture is not blocked by the mask, I am afraid that the people around will be directly attracted again. It's a little troublesome. Liang narrowed his eyes slightly and said in a low voice, I don't even know about the existence of the pirates. Where did this guy from the Warring States get the news? If this pirate group is still hidden on this island, then their ability is not small. At least, they have done a good job in concealing people's eyes and ears. So, to find them, you can't start with the residents. Finished talking. Tina showed some doubts and asked, so, where do we start? Chapter 556_method. Look at the topography of the entire island first, and then you can only infer an accurate location by yourself, and then go check it out. What do you think? 3,000 children can be accommodated in any place. If the pirates really hide all the children here, they must find a safe and secret place. There are not many places like this. Besides, the purpose of arresting children is to practice the piano. Then, 3,000 children, can the sound not be noisy? Quote. Liang's eyes flickered, and he explained with a smile, combining the above inferences, it is possible to find some prominent places and hit Wonglong. That's right. Hancock, Taotu, and Tina's eyes lit up and nodded. 3,000 children, it is impossible, the world evaporates, right? Of course. If it's really a message error and the child isn't here, then their search will be fruitless. If you really can't find it, you can only go back in vain. Anyway. They came out of this line, not simply to perform this task, but to enjoy the scenery at the source, which is their main purpose. Now, go check out the landscape first. Liang looked at the endless horizon ahead and said slowly. The island is quite large. It is conceivable that it can accommodate nearly 1 million people. An island is almost comparable to some countries. Some small countries don't even have this number yet. With the increase in the number of people, it is not without reason that this island is so prosperous. Under Liang's observation, he also quickly came to a conclusion. This island is the center of the surrounding waters. People from other islands will concentrate on trade here, which has formed the prosperity of the entire island. If there are no people from other islands to enter, it is naturally impossible for this place to prosper. It is precisely because of business and trade that the island's economy can be driven. On the streets and alleys, there are pedestrians everywhere, and there is a burst of noise. Do you know that there is a casino opened in the east recently, and the odds are quite high? People are rushing to that casino in an endless stream. Isn't the previous casino abolished? That's right, So, in the next few days, they will definitely have a conflict. At that time, there will be a good show to watch. Neither of these are fuel-efficient lamps. Anyway, these things have nothing to do with us. We also opened a pub recently, and the price is still very cheap. Let's go have a couple of drinks. Quote. A burst of chatter came into Li Ang's ear. His face was calm, and with the three of Hancock behind him, he walked step by step in this prosperous street. To ordinary people, they are like ordinary travelers. But in fact, they are figuring out the terrain here before they can track the address of the pirate group. The most obvious feature of finding the pirates is that they need a large area to accommodate the 3,000 children. If the place is not large enough, it can only be scattered. Dispersion. Li Ang's eyes flashed, the corners of his mouth moved slightly, and he said with a smile, "It seems that we may have fallen into a misunderstanding from the beginning. If we hadn't thought of it just now, we might have come back without success." What? Hancock's beautiful eyes asked with deep doubts. Tautu and Tina also looked at Li Ang's position with puzzled expressions on their faces. Chapter 556_methods. Tautu and Tina also looked at Li Ang's position with puzzled expressions on their faces. At the beginning, we subconsciously believed that the goal of their 3,000 people would be very large. Therefore, many actions are very inconvenient and even more eye-catching. Therefore, we will think about how noisy and lively the scene where 3,000 of them gather together at the same time. In this way, we are in their favor. What if they were separated? Li Ang narrowed his eyes slightly and said with a smile. Almost, even his thinking entered a misunderstanding. But fortunately, it was reflected in time. Spread apart. The three women looked at each other, nodded and said, "Yes, if they are scattered, then we will not be able to find their specific location. There are too many people here, and it is easier said than done to find them." How many people are there in this pirate group? Li Ang looked inside the body and asked. "I'll count." Tina took out the reward list, counted it carefully, and finally answered, "A total of 24 people." At the beginning, when she got the reward list, she just glanced at the characters on it and didn't remember how many people there were. Looking back now, if there were 24 people, then the 3,000 children could be divided into 24 points, and each person led more than 100 children to hide in this prosperous island. Flowers. If there are more than 100 children, there are countless ways to hide it. In this way, it will be a little difficult for them to find these people. Mainly, the people here don't even know what happened recently. In other words, here, nothing major happened at all. Does that mean that the child did not disappear here? It was the group of pirates who were caught from other places, but were just hidden here. If you say that, who is the one who gave the warring states information? With so many doubts, Li Ang couldn't even think of a reason. However, there is no need for him to think too much, but it's just a group of pirates. If they find it, they will destroy it easily. If they can't find it, then the mission will be declared a failure, and it will have no effect. 0. If everyone leads more than 100 children, although it is not very obvious, it will definitely cause others to notice. I don't believe that the whole island, no one knows. Tina's pink lips parted slightly, her expression somewhat firm, said. Having said that, but this island is so big, who to ask? Where to ask? Li Ang's face was calm and he said slowly. At this time, the help of manpower can be fully withdrawn. If the number of people is large, it is completely possible to conduct a carpet search of the island, rather than being at a loss as it is now. Do you want me to call the phone bug and have the surrounding naval branches send people over? Tautu thought for a while, looked at Li Ang, and asked. No need. Li Ang shook his head, a shrimp smile appeared on his face, and he said meaningfully, wouldn't it be more interesting for the four of us to find them? Moreover, if there are a large number of people, it is easy to scare the snakes, both advantages and disadvantages. Besides, the four of us may not be able to find them. It's just that it's a little troublesome, but it's not impossible, so why bother them? Then what do we do? Hancock asked with a little curiosity. How to do it? Liang raised his head, looked up at the sky, and said bluntly, for now, let's find a place to rest first. There is also a place to stay. After setting up the salute, we will find a way. Chapter 557_check-in. Well, that's right. Hancock nodded slightly in agreement. Now everyone still carries the salute. If dragging the salute to go to work, there will be a lot of inconvenience. Anyway, you have come to this place, so don't be in a hurry. Come on, I saw a luxurious hotel just now. Liang walked in front with a smile, leading the three girls. That group of children will definitely be fine. After all, they are now, to those pirates, their importance is self-evident. As long as the pirates are not mad, they will definitely not kill any child. So, for now, we don't need to worry. Take your time, you can always find clues. It's okay to take a break first. Liang glanced at Tautu and Tina behind him and smiled. Yeah. Tautu and Tina were slightly relieved, and lightly tapped their chins, revealing a splendid 557 smile. It is certain that children will never be killed. Otherwise, the group of pirates will also fall short. Unless, when they really think that the children are a bunch of trash, then they will naturally choose to kill them all, or just let them go. Because children are no longer of any use to them. Soon. Under the leadership of Liang, he crossed the street and arrived at the door of a hotel. One look. The splendid hotel, the entrance is quite luxurious, and there are two waiters, wearing uniforms, standing on both sides to welcome the guests who come to check in. Hello, four distinguished guests. The two sweet and lovely women bowed and smiled politely. In the eyes of ordinary people, the faces of the two of them are quite good. But Liang, who is used to seeing the faces of Hancock and others, didn't feel much. When he is used to seeing beautiful things, and seeing them as a level line in the eyes of ordinary people, Liang would feel that they are relatively inferior things. A room. Liang walked into the hotel and smiled lightly. Immediately, the pretty faces of the three girls, Hancock, Tautu, and Tina behind them turned red, and their expressions seemed a little unnatural. Especially after hearing what Liang said. The two sweet women glanced at Liang and the three women behind them with strange eyes. However, they, who are quite high quality, did not speak. At this time, the guests are alone when they speak, they are not so stupid. Sir, please come with me. A beautiful-faced woman with long black hair nodded, walked in front of her, and said in a low voice. Lead the way. Liang nodded and led Hancock's three daughters into the hotel. As soon as I stepped into the hotel, the magnificent hall appeared in my eyes. Looking forward, there is also a crystal-clear swimming pool, which is really surprising. Hancock walked to Liang's side and whispered angrily, It's all your fault, we were all embarrassed just now. We were all laughed at by others. What's this? Isn't it normal for a couple to have a house? Liang narrowed his eyes slightly and said with a smile. Hancock stomped his feet in anger, and the red high-heeled shoes made a crisp sound, revealing his long legs as white as jade, and the figure of the devil, full of charm. Tautu and Tina didn't have much expressions, just blushing. They were hidden in masks, and their expressions were not seen to fluctuate. Under the leadership of the sweet woman, Liang successfully arrived at the front desk. A room. Liang took out some berry and handed it to the woman. Chapter 557_check-in. Liang took out some berry and handed it to the woman. Although he won't carry too many things like berry, he always has to carry some to avoid unnecessary troubles. Although, he is not afraid of trouble, but if there is too much trouble, it is not good to delay time. However, even if he didn't carry berry, he wouldn't care. Anyway, there are too many pirates on the street. Killing anyone casually and living here for a year and a half is not a problem. Of course, this approach will naturally alarm the people on the entire island. Li Ang didn't want to do such a mindless thing in advance. After attracting the attention of others, after taking precautions, it will become more troublesome to find the group of pirates. Sir, please take what's in your room and come with me. The woman quickly dealt with the relevant matters, and said with a polite smile. En route. Li Ang carefully observed the surrounding environment. The floor of this hotel is quite clean, and the surrounding walls are also covered with some decorations, which are very beautifully decorated. It can be said that it is very high grade. By the way, let me ask, has there been anything weird on the island recently? For example, someone's belongings are missing, or something else. Li Ang looked at the sweet woman in front of him and asked with a smile. Weird thing. The woman was confused, shook her head, and said, No, I have never heard of anything. However, it may be that I am ignorant, and I have never understood or paid much attention to these news. Is that so? Li Ang still had a smile on his face, thinking about it in his heart. Aside. The three girls looked at Li Ang's thoughtful expression, but also fell silent and did not speak. A long time. Under the leadership of the woman, Li Ang and others arrived at the room smoothly. Sir, please take good care of your belongings. Our staff will patrol around the clock to ensure that your personal property will not be stolen by criminals. The woman politely opened the door for Li Ang, and then handed the key to Li Ang again, reminding him. I see. Li Ang nodded and smiled. If there's nothing wrong with Sir, then I'll go first. The woman bowed and was about to leave. At this time, Li Ang suddenly asked, By the way, do you know that there are places around here where the sound of the piano is often heard? Immediately, the expressions of Hancock, Tautu, and Tina also showed a bit of seriousness. They looked at the woman, silent, and did not disturb Li Ang's inquiry. The sound of the piano. The woman tilted her head, thought for a moment, her eyes lit up, she nodded and said, Yes, it is in the south direction, not far from the central square, an empty music hall. There, construction has just begun. 3.6 inches after all, Master Li Ang can use the sound of the piano to control the Sea Kings. Therefore, the construction of natural music halls will also increase. These days, more and more people are learning the piano. Quote. Having said that, the woman started to talk and talk together without stopping. You know Li Ang well. Li Ang was keenly aware that the woman's topic always revolved around him. This surprised him, and he couldn't help but smile. In front of the deity, brag about Li Ang. He couldn't help laughing, and his smile was weird. Hancock, Tautu, and Tina looked at each other and held back their smiles without disturbing the woman's words. If the woman was told that Li Ang was standing in front of her, would she be shocked? Expressing shock. However, she didn't recognize Li Ang, which was very interesting. Chapter 558 Another Li Ang. It stands to reason that Li Ang should not be unrecognizable. Li Ang's recognition is quite high, and after many major incidents, Li Ang's face appeared in the newspapers. No matter how ignorant he is, it's impossible not to know Li Ang, right? What's more, the girl in front of her also showed a strong sense of admiration for Li Ang, so she should not recognize Li Ang. You know, Li Ang did not wear a mask, but showed people with a lineup. Can't recognize it. The pretty faces of Hancock, Tautu, and Tina showed deep suspicion, looking at the woman in front of them, filled with puzzlement. Originally, they also felt that things were a little interesting. But now that I think about it carefully, I feel that something is wrong. But they couldn't tell what was wrong. Li Ang. The woman's eyes flickered. She was wearing a black uniform, her figure was still quite good, her face was a little red, she nodded and said, I like him, he is the target of my worship. Are you sure, the person you admire is Li Ang 23? Li Ang narrowed his eyes slightly, looked at the woman in front of him, and chuckled. People who worship are standing in front of you, can't you recognize them? Is this really a man of worship? Or, is this woman lying? But it is not necessary. Why is she lying? There is absolutely no need for this. This was just an ordinary exchange, and she and Li Ang were never acquaintances, so there was no need to tell a big lie in front of a stranger. Even if she doesn't lie, nothing will come of it. If that's the case, what benefit can she bring to lying? This is absolutely useless. In other words, the chance of her lying is less than 0.01%. Things got a little weird. Let Li Ang smell it, an unusual smell. This woman, what she said, and her cognition, were very strange. Is it because of ignorance, or something else? However, since she has already said it, the person she admires is Li Ang, and there is not much possibility of lying. Then, when Li Ang stood in front of her, why couldn't she recognize him? I'm sure, what's wrong? The woman nodded, with a sweet smile, said. No matter how you look at it, you can't see that she is lying on purpose. No, nothing more. Li Ang waved his hand, his eyes flashed, and he said slowly. At the same time, the three women standing behind him, with their delicate faces hidden under the masks, gradually became very strange, looking at this woman with strange eyes, unable to speak for a long time. Let's talk about the people you admire. They are all standing in front of you, how can you not recognize them? Is it deliberately not recognizable? Why would she do this on purpose? There is no accurate statement. But this woman's expression and behavior are showing that she doesn't recognize Li Ang at all. However, she said the words of admiring Li Ang again. Was it unnecessary? Several. If there is nothing wrong, then I will retire first. The woman bowed very politely, lowered her head, and said. Wait a minute. Li Ang's eyes flashed and he spoke slowly, preventing the woman from leaving. Is there anything else? The woman turned her head, looked at Li Ang suspiciously, and asked. May I ask, why do you worship Li Ang? Is it just because he attracted the Sea Kings with his piano sound? Or is it because of his strength? The corners of Li Ang's mouth were slightly raised, and he smiled lightly. Speaking of himself, he always felt that his words seemed a little unnatural. Chapter 558 Another Li Ang. And GT, page 1/2. Please click the next page to continue reading. Speaking of himself, he always felt that his words seemed a little unnatural. Does this count as bragging? What's the matter? Here, many people worship Li Ang. The woman looked at Li Ang very puzzled, and explained, it's not because of the strength of Lord Li Ang or other reasons. Anyway, after Lord Li Ang came to our island, there are more people on our island who learn the piano. And, every day, Mr. Li Ang will teach us, so that those piano lovers can effectively learn better piano and improve their level. The most important thing is that the music hall opened by Mr. Li Ang is full of people every day. Every day is surrounded by water, and everyone wants to see Mr. Li Ang. Unfortunately, I don't have time today. Otherwise, I'll definitely go and see you. Quote. After a few words, the beautiful eyes of Hancock, Tautu, and Tina gradually enlarged. They subconsciously looked at Li Ang next to them, red lips slightly parted, and said nothing. I see. At this moment, Li Ang's face became more and more colorful and full of interest, and his eyes were shining brightly. Another Li Ang. This is really fun. He admitted that he had never been to the island, and this was his first time. Therefore, there can be no such thing as opening a music hall, and it is impossible to teach others to learn the piano. He himself has never done these things, he can be absolutely certain. And some time ago, he came from Marin Fando. During this time, he spent all the time on the warship with the girls. The three of Hancock can guarantee that there is absolutely no possibility that Li Ang has been to this island. From this, the problem follows. Li Ang in the mouth of the woman, who is this person? Could it be that Li Ang has been here before? Tina's pink lips parted slightly, and she whispered to herself. She was almost confused. Who is this with whom? Li Ang again in a while, but isn't Liang in front of them? But in other words, is the Liang they said, 037 and the Liang this woman said, really the same person? Think of this. Hancock spoke first and asked softly, is that Liang you're talking about, the one at the Navy headquarters? Yes, but he came to our island very early. The woman nodded and affirmed Hancock's words. Heard. Hancock, Tautu, and Tina looked at each other and didn't speak again. Liang narrowed his eyes slightly, with a smile on the corner of his mouth, feeling a little interested. Actually, here, I met another Liang. This thing is really interesting. Very early. How much is that? He has just landed ashore and successfully stepped into this island. If there is no order from the Warring States period, I am afraid that it will be a problem whether he will come here or not. Then things got more subtle. Who is playing his role? Someone wants to use my name to fool around. Liang's eyes flickered and he whispered to himself. He still admires the courage of this man. At least. In the whole sea, there is only such a person, and he has only seen such an example. Dare to use his name, use his achievements and experience to brag to others, and directly replace his name, enjoying a relaxed and comfortable life here. Chapter 559 _ the modified newspaper. Such people, I didn't expect, really exist. How bold is this to dare to do this? However, this person is a talented person. He has been impersonating for so long, and he has not been discovered by others. Instead, everyone here believes that he is the real Liang. This surprised Liang. Don't everyone else read the newspaper? Or, does this person have the exact same face as him? Wrong. If it is exactly the same, why did the woman in front of him not express surprise at his face? That is to say, that Liang is absolutely the opposite of his appearance. Therefore, after the woman saw him, she did not think in that direction. So, is this person, even my appearance, replaced? Liang's eyes flickered, the corners of his mouth moved slightly, and he said in a low voice. Thinking of this, he became more curious about this person. Have to admit, this is also a good talent. It's a pity, there is a good way to go, but he wants to provoke him. I'm afraid, this so-called Liang doesn't know yet that he has already provoked a monster thinking about him. Pirates cannot find. However, this person who pretended to be him must be found. No matter how you say it, your own reputation will never be allowed to be used by others. Sir, if you want to know more, you can read our latest newspaper. It's in the room and it's ready for you. The woman thought for a moment and said slowly. Okay. Liang said with a calm face, I'm sorry to trouble you. It's okay, then I'll go first. If there's something wrong, you can inform the staff in the corridor, and they will arrange it properly for you. After the woman nodded, with a polite smile, she gradually left. Looking at the woman's back, Liang's eyes flashed with a strange figure. Come on, let's go in and talk. Liang looked at the three of Hancock and said. Well. The three girls nodded. Crunch. Enter the room and close the door. Hancock, Tautu, and Tina also took off the masks on their faces, revealing delicate and flawless white faces, which were indescribably beautiful. Such a face, it is no wonder that it will bring a 100% horror degree when it is placed on the street. It's so comfortable. Tina lay on the cushion, her whole body relaxed, said. What do you think about that incident just now? Hancock looked at Liang, and asked with a little doubt on his pretty face. Immediately, Tautu and Tina also came over and looked at Liang, wanting to hear each other's opinions. They didn't believe that, with Liang's character, they would let it pass like this. What do you think I should do? Liang smiled instead, looked at the three girls, and asked. You dare to pretend to be your husband's name, unforgivable. Tina spoke first, her pink lips slightly parted, and her beautiful eyes flashed with murderous intent. That's right. Tautu and Hancock also nodded. Chapter 559 _ the modified newspaper. Tautu and Hancock also nodded. For the person who pretended to be Li Ang's name, they naturally showed no sympathy. This kind of person may die, so as not to use Li Ang's name to sway and deceive in the future. Of course he won't let him go. However, what I'm wondering now is why, the staff member just now, didn't recognize me. The corners of Li Ang's mouth were slightly raised, and there was a trace of doubt on his face. That's right. It stands to reason that with my husband's reputation, we shouldn't be obscure. Basically, the entire sea area has already flowed into everyone's ears. In this case, it is really difficult to pretend to be an identity. Basically, the Navy headquarters has already dispatched a portrait pattern. As long as the traffic is smooth, it is impossible not to know that Li Ang is the right person. But why, not a single one of the people here can be recognized? Quote. Hancock, Tautu, and Tina showed deep puzzlement on their faces. Not only Li Ang was puzzled, but the three of them were also very puzzled. The Navy headquarters, as well as many newspapers, have long been circulated all over the world. Li Ang's name and appearance, under normal circumstances, have also been known to everyone. In this way, it will be quite difficult to impersonate Li Ang. Because the popularity is too high. It's like, people in the whole world know the Marshal of the Warring States period. If there is a person who looks different from the Warring States and runs off to pretend to be the Warring States, will anyone believe this? Obviously, no one will believe it. But what happened in front of him seems so strange. This impersonator can actually make so many people trust his identity, which is quite a strange thing in itself. It can only be said that this impostor did not have a temporary intention, but was already prepared. Only by making adequate preparations can we pretend to be flawless, so that everyone subconsciously believes that the impostor is Li Ang himself. To be able to do this, preparation is definitely inevitable. Moreover, perhaps this impostor had already planned this idea in a very early period of time. However, recently, this plan has only gradually begun. Diaresis, would you like to take a look? That so-called music hall. Tautu's beautiful eyes flashed and asked in a low voice. Don't worry, find out what's going on here first. This thing is getting more and more interesting, so it won't be boring. It would be too reckless to mess things up all at once. Li Ang said with a faint smile on his face. Look first, what's in the newspaper? Hancock tapped his pointed chin lightly and walked to the table next to him. She slowly stretched out her hand, picked up the two identical newspapers on the table, and casually flipped through them. Mei glanced at them, and could no longer move them away. Her beautiful eyes gradually enlarged, her long eyelashes trembled, and her delicate face showed a somewhat shocked expression, as if she saw something that she couldn't believe. Nuo Zhao's. Li Ang was keenly aware of the change in Hancock's expression and couldn't help asking, what's wrong? Tautu and Tina also looked at Hancock, puzzled. Look. Hancock took a deep breath, handed a copy of the newspaper in his hand to Tautu and Tina, and finally to Li Ang. His pretty face became very serious. This is. Li Ang held the newspaper in both hands, glanced at the on it, and the smile on his face became even brighter. Interesting, so much fun. This line is really not too boring. Actually, let him discover such an interesting thing. I didn't expect it. Tina's pink lips parted slightly, and her expression also looked very surprised. It turns out. Tautu's red lips moved slightly, her beautiful eyes fixed on the newspaper, and she whispered to herself, the source of the matter is in this place. No wonder. Now, many things can be explained. Chapter 560 _ Meet Robin by chance. No, who would have thought that the original plan started from here? I just said that someone could actually replace my appearance. It turns out that from the newspapers, my appearance has been changed, and only my deeds are left, so that this impostor can pull a tiger's skin. Li Ang's eyes flashed and he smiled meaningfully. Yes. Hancock, Tautu, and Tina said in inexplicable voices. In their hands, the newspaper they held went up, and the portrait that originally belonged to Liang seemed to have changed into another person. The man was about 30 years old, still looking very young, with a handsome face. This is in line with the elegant temperament of a musician, with a tall and thin figure, wearing a white shirt, and his eyes are very deep and full of wisdom. The appearance is quite in line with the aesthetics of some young girls. The corners of Liang's mouth were slightly raised, and he said with a faint smile, "Compared with my husband, this guy is far worse." Hancock gritted his silver teeth fiercely and said angrily. Seeing someone pretending to be Liang, they were naturally very angry. "Ha ha, don't be too angry, let's go to him later and settle it. If I'm angry for such a small role, then I have to keep my face straight every day." Liang waved his hand, looked at Hancock evil 380 feet's fierce and cute appearance, and smiled. If someone impersonates, he will deal with it. However, if you want to make him angry, just relying on ordinary small characters is not enough. If he was angry about this little thing, wouldn't he be so angry about other big things? His mentality was not so easily provoked yet. "My lord, let's find him now." Tautu Maimu also looked at Liang with murderous intent and suggested softly. Seeing that someone continued to pretend to be Liang, she was very upset. Liang's hard-earned reputation was actually replaced by someone pretending to be. No matter how she could endure this, she couldn't wait to slash that impostor with 1,000 swords. For everything about Liang, they are very attentive. "Don't worry, you guys." Liang smiled and looked at the anxious and delicate faces of the three girls, his eyes gradually softened, and his heart was warm. Seeing the feeling that the three girls were eager to stand up for him and kill the impostor, a warmth slowly flowed in his heart. "I'm so angry when I see this guy pretending to be your husband's name." Hancock's beautiful eyes fluctuated with murderous intent, gritted his silver teeth, and said, "She never imagined that in this world, there are people who don't have eyes, who dare to pretend to be Liang. This is the first time she has seen such a person. Let's analyze it first. He can pretend to be me to get to this point. Obviously, there must be some energy here. Moreover, the plan is also quite meticulous. You think, with so many outsiders, no one can expose him. It's not that no one exposed him, but this person must have been concealed. In other words, the masses don't believe the words of outsiders at all. In this case, it can be shown that his brainwashing ability is still quite powerful. He can control so many supporters in an instant." Liang explained with a smile, "To sum up the above, it is certain that there is a force behind him. This force, as a promoter, pushed him to this position. Or, he is the leader of this strength. Then what are we waiting for? Kill him and uproot the forces behind him. Do we care about these little forces?" Hancock's pretty face was puzzled and hurriedly said, "For her, the Empress of the Seven Martial Seas, unless she is a force at the level of the four emperors of the New World, otherwise, the rest of the forces will not make her care too much. Not to mention, in front of him, there is a real Liang. This is a terrifying existence that can suppress the four emperors. In this sea, what force can stop Liang's footsteps?" Okay, why are you in such a hurry? I also plan to see their next steps and actions. Chapter 560_Meet Robin by Chance. Okay, why are you in such a hurry? I also plan to see their next steps and actions. Liang looked at the anxious and pretty faces of the three girls and couldn't help but smile. Of course you're in a hurry, he's pretending to be your name. Such people must be ruthlessly killed, including the forces behind them. Let everyone know and pretend to be your name. Yes, we will never let him go. We don't want to wait even a minute. The expressions of Hancock, Tina, and Tautu were serious, and their beautiful eyes flashed with a hint of coldness. A chilling air radiated from them. Liang is the person they value the most. It is unforgivable that someone dares to pretend to be the person they value the most. Seeing the expressions of the three women, Li Ang almost thought that someone else had provoked the three wives. However, the three wives are so concerned about his affairs, and he is naturally very gratified. All right, let's go now. Li Ang's eyes flickered, holding a stack of newspapers in his hand, and smiled. Yeah. Hancock, Tautu, and Tina held the newspaper tightly in their hands. In their beautiful eyes, there was still a powerful killing intent, burning with anger. Even Li Ang, standing beside the three girls, felt a biting coldness. Hey, forgot to put on the mask, the three of you. Li Ang suddenly picked up the mask on the table and reminded with a smile. Yes, I almost forgot. The three of Hancock returned to their senses, and a bit of embarrassment appeared on their pretty faces. Wearing a mask is just the beginning and has not yet become their habit. Naturally, it is easy to forget to wear a mask. Soon. The three of them all wore masks of different colors, but the devil's figure still couldn't be concealed. Just by looking at the figure, it could be judged that these three women were absolutely beautiful. Let's go. Li Ang walked in front, opened the door, and led the three girls to the direction of the corridor step by step. Several staff members are patrolling to ensure safety here. After seeing Li Ang, several staff members did not speak, and did their own work. Across the corridor, Li Ang led the three girls down the stairs. From the position below, there was a crisp and pleasant sound. A group of people dressed in black appeared in front of Li Ang. At the same time, a familiar voice also appeared in Li Ang's ear. That kind of text is so hard, I haven't fully deciphered it yet. It doesn't matter, there is plenty of time, this time the task is not as urgent as it used to be. That's good, but I will interpret it within 3 days, don't worry. Quote. There were about 5 or 6 people in a group of people in black, and their voices were very subtle. However, it was still passed into Li Ang's ears, clearly visible. A woman's voice is extremely familiar, how could Li Ang forget it? Immediately. His footsteps stopped abruptly, a deep smile appeared on his face, and he looked at the group of men in black in front of him, his eyes fixed on one of them, a relatively thin figure. The black clothes covered the figure's face. However, Li Ang can still recognize the delicate face of this man hidden under the black clothes. Robin. Li Ang narrowed his eyes slightly and said with a smile, long time no see.